This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Haliburton will try to take advantage. He blows by Lopez and sends it to the corner. 8-0 Pacers. Turner with a three, and Milwaukee is reeling early, a minute and a half in. Loose ball in the Milwaukee forecourt. Turner stole it. At the other end, a right-hand slam for Siakam. Nembhard on the wing. Now retreats, moves forward down the right side, picks up the bounce, and a nifty bounce pass into the lane. Found Turner, who dunked it. Now McConnell pulls up, left side, dumps it to the top, and Siakam hits a three. McConnell with excellent plays at both ends. They're on a 13-point run, and they've cut it to 2. Pacers in desperate need of a field goal. Here's Haliburton to the left wing. Sends it outside. Siakam gives to Nembhard. 2:16 to go. Nembhard left edge. Shot clock down to 8. Nembhard played by Antetokounmpo. Driving it right hand. Kicks it right side. Siakam is open. And that is a much-needed three. Nembhard down the left side. Confronted by Antetokounmpo. The shot clock at 6. He backs it up and buries a three from out on the left edge, right in front of Doc Rivers, who calls a timeout.
Andrew Nembhard, absolutely fearless.
The building was as loud as I've ever heard it. And, you know, I've been in here for the finals games in 2000 and a lot of conference finals games, and it's never been louder than it was tonight.
Let's get down to business. I don't got no time to play around. What is this? Must be a circus in town.
Pacers are talking. The Pacers are walking. They are up 2-0 in this best-of-7 series. Things will shift up to Milwaukee on Friday night. They have led for about 94 of 96 minutes so far in this series. It got close last night, but Mark Dykton, excellent re-entry as always. Boy, I thought those Mark Boyle clips, terrific. The Siakam three, the Nembhard three, that closed the book on what has been, I think, a very entertaining first 2 games of James Boyd. I'm reminded, I freaking love playoff basketball. I love it. I love everything that goes with it, the atmosphere, the chirping, the intensity, and I think many of our listeners love the Pacers up 2-0.
Kevin, I felt like I was at home with the pettiness, the back and forth, the tension, and obviously I haven't been around as long as Rick Carlisle when it comes to going to Pacers games, but it was extremely loud in there last night at a couple of different moments. I think a lot of that had to do with, one, you dominating the game, trying to make sure you go up 2-0 on your home court, but then also the back and forth. Pascal, I believe, got a technical foul last night, to dust up with Bobby Portis, and then, you had Damian Lillard and Tyrese Haliburton jawing at each other. And to me, I love it. As I keep saying, it's controlled hate. It's an environment where we don't like each other, and they're very obvious about that. You had Giannis saying that after the game, Tyrese as well. Rick Carlisle going off in the post-game interview. We'll get into that as well. But it was really, really fun to be there last night and just to experience that level of excitement for a team that is, playing really good basketball right now and held on late.
Good Wednesday morning to everybody out there. Thank you for spending it with us. This is the Fan Morning Show. Jeff, unfortunately, out the rest of this week. No worries, though. He will be back with us to recap the draft, I guess, on Monday and recap potentially a sweep of the Pacers. We'll have to see where things stand when we reconvene on Monday. But obviously a busy show with the NFL draft taking place tomorrow. Anthony Richardson spoke yesterday for the first time in about 3.5 months, so we'll certainly get some reaction on that end, but so much of our focus today will be on game 2. Mark, I thought it was smart to include that clip at the start as well. The 8-0 start, and Mark Boyle uses the word reeling. I cannot emphasize enough. I thought the fact that the Pacers were the hungrier team, up 1-0 out of the gate, I thought sent quite the message. And the Bucks had to rely on a heroic, frankly, performance from Bobby Portis. Giannis was Giannis again. But Lillard ran out of gas, and the Bucks had to be perfect in the fourth quarter, and they were not. So, again, this series now shifts up to Milwaukee with the Pacers up 2-0. Stephen Holder, who has been a busy man on both beats here.
I saw him last night.
He will be joining us coming up at 8 o'clock.
My brother, who is a Bucks fan, right before tip, sent a GIF of just Damian Lillard doing the Dame time, tapping on the wrist. And 5 minutes into the game, he's like, well, that backfired spectacularly. I'm like, yeah, they didn't get off to the hot start I thought they would.
I could not believe he played 37 minutes.
I know.
I just thought he hit a wall there.
He really did, but he did start off. Those first couple of shots went down, and I was like,
I mean, they are a much different team with Lillard. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, A, him, and then B, you just have to guard them differently.
Yeah,
I mean, how many
absolutely.
just open looks did Portis get last night? So, that, I guess, is for game 3. But, James, so much of last night, again, I thought you punched them early, and I thought that was really key. And that's exactly how you want your star to respond. It happened in the 9 o'clock hour yesterday when the anonymous poll, which certainly we can get into, came out about Tyrese Haliburton labeled overrated. I hope that you hit the overs on all of those player bets, Kevin, because that was an absolute lock. And just more than any of that, James, that's how he is supposed to respond. And you can look at it the first quarter. He had 7 and 6 at the end of the first quarter. That's a pretty good first quarter when you talk about your star after a quieter game 1. He ends it with 21 and 12. He is talking. He is walking. I just think that's exactly what you want. When, I don't want to overblow maybe the overrated nature of the anonymous poll, but at the same time, he clearly heard it. It clearly did something to him. How do you react to it? And I thought he reacted in a way you'd want your $200 million guy to react.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed hearing his candidness after the game, hearing Rick Carlisle, obviously, as well. That one probably got more clicks and views. But Tyrese himself, one thing I have always told you all is that he is vulnerable. He will tell you what he really thinks most of the time. And so when he's saying, hey, I heard it, does it affect me? No. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm going to be myself. All I care about is winning, and I don't give a bleep about what anybody else thinks. And I do think he cares. I think he hears it, but I think he channels it in a very mature way.
Which I don't think is easy to do.
No. And when I was, following up with him about that last night, asking him, like, man, how do you play with – if you watch the game, and there was moments where, I'm really, like, zeroing on him. And it's hard to do because you're so used to watching the ball, right, or watching whoever's scoring, but just seeing the little things throughout the game. And so I was, asking him, how do you pick and choose when to give energy to the opponent when they're chirping at you, give energy to your teammates, point to your dad in the crowd, and then also just he dunked it in the second quarter and screamed at the ball. And it's like, how do you play with joy, rage, passion, all these things and still play effectively? And I think he's kind of mastered that. And, maybe I'm getting a little bit too much on my soapbox here, but I do think that his game may have been appreciated more if we weren't in necessarily this era of basketball, because he's like a traditional point guard, and it's almost like a lost art. So his dominance isn't going to look like what we've seen in recent years from a lot of the top guards in the NBA. Like, he's not scoring at the same rate as Steph Curry or Damian Lillard. He's not going to, fly through the lane and dunk on you like Derrick Rose used to or Ja Morant. But when you look up at the end of the night, Haliburton has 21, 12, and 5. Those are elite numbers in the playoffs, So credit to him for again, one, admitting that he did see it. A lot of athletes are like, I don't see anything. I don't pay attention to no outside noise. No, he hears it all. And I think he has found a healthy way to channel it. He's even talked about having a mental therapist as far as like sports goes throughout the years and dealing with the pressures of what comes with it, whether it's, spectators, peers, whatever. And now you can see him kind of blossoming and embracing everything that comes with it. Because at the end of the day, Kevin, you don't get voted overrated if you're not winning, if you're not, doing something to have some success, right? You don't get voted overrated if you're losing all the time. So he's doing something right, as he said.
Well, hell, he made one of the greatest international basketball teams of all time. So clearly he's not overrated, and I guess important decision makers' minds in rounding out that team. Again, I thought he was key last night. I thought your bench continued to give you quality minutes. I thought McConnell, I don't know if the box score will do it justice, but I thought TJ McConnell was key last night. I know Kevin Porter had a little bit of a flurry there to start the fourth quarter, but I thought McConnell really outplayed him, which I was not necessarily expecting. And then, of course, Siakam and Nembhard hit those 2 shots. And just, you were...
How about Nembhard? My goodness.
And the thing about Nembhard, and I know we asked Rick about it to end things yesterday, like so many times, James, when within that starting unit, he's probably the 5th scoring option. We could get into a little bit of debate. I don't know, Nesmith maybe is the 5th scoring option. But so many times when you throw it to that guy, you want the grenade to be in his hands if you're the other team. If you're the Bucks, you don't want that grenade in Nembhard's hands late clock because he's got no fear. That's Giannis on him, And as soon as he caught it, I said to myself, oh boy. And the oh boy was not necessarily like, oh bleep.
Right.
It was more like, oh boy, is he going to do it again? That was my thought because I'm like, I know where he is on that floor. When he's on that end of the floor and it's left wing, that man, I'd love to see a shooting percentage from that left wing on that end of the floor, particularly in the fourth quarter games. And as soon as he got that step back going, I thought to myself, he might just hit this again. And sure enough, one of the few possessions, because the Bucks can't guard the Pacers at all. One of the few possessions that clock ever got, real late.
Yeah.
Nembhard step back and the absolute dagger. And by the way, shout out to Miles Turner for keeping that possession alive. They were able to create an extra possession there. That was obviously key. And if you make the Bucks continue to defend, they will crack. And that was probably a little bit more of just Nembhard's shot making than it was poor defense by the Bucks.
But how beneficial is that? In the playoffs, you need extra shot creation. And we did see late, they were really blitzing Haliburton off the screens. He kind of struggled to get some good looks. But when you have a guy like Nembhard who doesn't flinch in the moment, like you said, Kevin, and embraces it. And also, throughout the game, he's one that will chirp too. He does
he was chirping hard.
Exactly.
Let me be very clear. The Pacers are talking. I mean,
right.
McConnell's talking. Haliburton's talking. Nembhard's talking. But they're walking.
The part I love about it, to your point, they're walking. But to me, they're not getting punked. And I think a lot of that, when you go into a playoff series, and I'll be honest, you have Giannis and Dame on your team. For players who haven't been there before, that can be a bit intimidating. And so, in times last year, and I know they were banged up and Giannis didn't play, were there moments where you're like, man, are they going to wilt? Are they going to cave? But this year, I'm like, man, these dudes are like, we've been here, we've done this before, and the veterans are leading the way. So Tyrese, as you saw, like on the baseline, had this great shot. Also later on when I got back of just, him and Haliburton and Lillard looking at each other, jawing at each other. And I'm like, man, it's like a prize fighter just like, doing the weigh-in or something like
they
that.
They had those back-to-back threes in the first quarter. I kind of love that sequence.
And those things, I think, just add to the tension. But on top of that, the Pacers don't duck any of it. They don't duck any smoke, as they say. They run to it. They welcome it. And I think that is a sign of a team that is sort of realizing what playoff basketball is about, because teams are going to try to test you, not only just skill-wise, but, mentally, are you going to break before we do? And they haven't broken. It's almost like, you had Thomas Bryant chirping at some point. I mean, the entire team is feeling galvanized, and I think a lot of that has to do with their leader, Tyrese Haliburton, not flinching either. I mean, the guy, look, he gives us that $1 million smile after the game. He's going to be one of the most, selfless athletes I've seen off the court as far as autographs and giving away shoes, whatever. But on the court, he's not running from any of this.
No,
at all.
They play with great individual and team swagger, yet they still play very unselfish. And I think it's hard to be both of that. And if you look at it, I mean, single-digit turnovers in these first two games. Find me how many times this season the Pacers played back-to-back games with single-digit turnovers. I would guess it hasn't happened very often. So up 2-0, plenty to react to from last night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Shout out to the Deer Hunters next to Rick Carlisle there. At one point in the third quarter, I saw only 3 of them came back. I thought, is the fourth one still at the bar? But the fourth one did come back.
Just grab an extra Bush Light.
Extra Bush Light.
Right by Jake. Jake should get him on the show.
More camo.
Yeah.
Sure. The Australian guy and the Deer Hunters, right?
Yeah.
Flamingo guy in the building last night. Lance Stevenson in the building last night. The who's who. Caitlin Clark showing off her arm.
And you know what I was thinking the entire time she was throwing those shirts? Like, girl, please. You are a couple days away from starting training camp.
Underhand toss it,
yes,
maybe.
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Yeah. Kelsey Mitchell, stop with the left. Caitlin Clark, stop with the right. Throw with your opposite arms into the crowd with that. Quite the scene last night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We will certainly talk a ton of that. And again, Colts Draft. We did hear from Anthony Richardson yesterday and Shane Stikcen. Anything of note, we'll toss your way as well. The great weather in Indy continues. Very fittingly, cars on the track over at IMS today. Some oval testing the next 2 days. So the roar of the engine and 70 degrees certainly is springtime here in central Indiana. Thanks for spending this Wednesday morning with us. Fan Morning Show, Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Butler Bulldogs basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
123-115. That was the final last night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. The Pacers led the entire way. Yes, indeed, it got a bit tense there. 115-113. The Bucks once again lose a Pacer on a possession. It is Pascal Siakam, ice water in the veins to knock it down, and Andrew Nembhard, late clock after that, really slammed the door shut on the Pacers now. Heading up to Milwaukee, up 2-0. Rick Carlisle last night on the Game 2 victory.
I heard. Look, we know he can score points, but there's a lot more to this than just scoring points. Look, Giannis and Lillard are two, forces of nature out there, and we just got to find a way to do a better job, and try to limit Giannis a little bit more.
Rick Carlisle there afterwards. James Boyd, single-digit turnover night for the Pacers. Again, Tyrese Haliburton, I thought, responded exactly how you would want him to. And certainly when it got close late, the Pacers were able to make the big shots.
Absolutely. I mean, it got tight there late. Lillard with the deep three to cut it to 2, and I was like, oh, man, here comes the boogeyman. But they got the last laugh, and the best thing about the playoffs is no matter how you stack them, the wins count all the same.
Yeah, and I just frankly, again, I wasn't worried about Game 2. I know it got close there late, but I think if you look at the big picture right now, 2 games into it, the Pacers have, I would say they've thoroughly outplayed the Bucks. Now things could shift when you go on the road. Will your role players continue to play as well as I think they have had so far? But still, so far, you've got to be very pleased. They've led for, frankly, every minute but like 1 or 2 maybe in the first sequence there in Game 1 on Saturday. So Game 3 coming up 8 o'clock on Friday. Other games last night in the NBA. Thunder continued to just absolutely dominate the Grizzlies in that 1-8 matchup. The Lakers did even it up. A bit of an ugly one. Both teams under 100 last night out in L.A. So Lakers and T-Wolves tied at 1. You got any viewing interest tonight, as we've got 1s and 2 seeds in action? You've got Boston, Cleveland, and then the Rockets and Warriors. That's probably where your viewing is going, right?
Yeah, but I'm also interested to see Boston and Orlando because I believe Jason Tatum listed as doubtful with like a wrist thing going on. So if he's out for Game 2, does that change the series at all?
Should the Pacers start to look at that and say, "Come on, Orlando"?
I don't know if you want to go that far.
Okay.
Boston is really good.
You'd probably be a little bit more on the Miami front, right? You want that series to go a little bit longer?
Exactly. Yep.
So again, Miami and Cleveland at 7:30 tonight. Warriors, Rockets 9:30. Magic, Celtics 7 o'clock. Major League Baseball, the Cubs with some heroics. Certainly, Mark Dykton, happy camper.
Go, Cubs, go! Go, Cubs, go! Hey, Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gone.
We're struggling to find the right Pacers audio, but of course Mark has the right Cubs audio here on this Wednesday morning. No surprise on that front. Again, oval testing over.
How'd your Reds do?
I
skipped right over that
today. 34 cars on the track. Should be great weather. I know the viewing mounds are open. I want to say it's 10 o'clock today, maybe 9:30 tomorrow. Double check those times. I probably should do that myself. 10 o'clock today, 9:30 tomorrow there. And again, I know we call it oval testing. It's pretty much Indy 500 practice time if you want to look at it from that standpoint. YouTube channel on IndyCar if you would like to view that, coming up a little bit later today. Indiana got another commit, Jason Drake. I think I'm saying that right. From Drexel here. You know anything about Jason Drake here, James?
I'll be honest, I was not aware of this until you just told me because I was locked into Anthony Richardson, Tyrese Haliburton. Yeah, I was on my laptop way too much last night, or yesterday actually all day, pretty much when we left the show. So the screen time is pretty nasty right now.
He averaged 11 points for Drexel last season. I will say this, Darren DeVries' roster as it is being built here, certainly on paper, you have skilled guards. They've added a bunch of them at the mid-major level. And you could probably look at it two ways. The mid-major level, you can look at it and say, well, these guys have chips on their shoulders, blah, blah, blah. Or you can look at it and say, are they ready to make the rise up to Big Ten basketball? They do need some bigger dudes. I mean, if you look
Especially
at it
the
right
Big Ten.
now,
Like, it's a bruising league. I mean, it gets clunky sometimes. You need some bodies.
they need some size, frankly, on that front. Anything else from you from the world of sports yesterday? I know the Colts had their first media availability. We'll get to some of that audio here. Upcoming Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen.
I think one of the things that really stood out, we can get into this, was Shane Steichen doubling down on the consistency factor at quarterback. Because when we pressed him, and I believe Stephen Holder will have him on later, when he kind of pressed Steichen on, okay, we hear you about consistency, but do you want consistency over explosiveness? Because
that was a different tune than what he has said previously, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I believe at the owners' meetings was like, the best guy will win the job. But the consistency part, I mean, he probably said that word 10 times in yesterday's pre-draft presser, and I was just like, wow, okay. Well, he's not doing a pre-draft presser, but the offseason training presser, and I was like, wow, that is very interesting to kind of hear, even when we kind of explained. I mean, we put it out there, and again, a shout out to Stephen Holder for explicitly saying, so Anthony's the more explosive quarterback, he's inconsistent. Daniel Jones is not explosive, but he's consistent. You know, does that factor into it? You know, and Shane was like, hey, the best man will win, but we'll take consistency, moving the ball down the field.
Yeah, again, Anthony Richardson had some comments about where he feels like he has made some self-improvements. We'll certainly get to that upcoming. Before we move along, rest in peace to Mike Patrick from ESPN. He is one of those voices, for me at least. I don't know, Mark, you're in my age range, but when I think back on particularly college sports, I know Sunday Night Football, he had a long history there, but that's just kind of a voice that I remember from growing up, and passed away yesterday at the age of 80. Duke, Carolina, I always feel like was Mike Patrick. For some reason, I always have I always think back to Omaha in the College Baseball World Series with Mike Patrick as well. So rest in peace to, again, a voice that I feel like I kind of grew up with from a college sport standpoint there, 80 years old.
Yeah, I remember one of the most memorable Bears games I ever went to was on Sunday night game that Mike Patrick was on the call for. It was the Bears against Michael Vick and the Falcons, and they just blew his ass up. It was freezing in Chicago, but we were at that game. And Mike
blew
Patrick
his
was
ass up?
Yeah, they could not. He
Quite
could not.
the
He had no
728
escapability
visual
that
there.
night. Urlacher was in his prime. It was a fun night, despite standing on like 2 inches of ice by your seat, but it was fun. And Mike Patrick was just like walking the concourse.
Coming up on the other side, plenty to get to from last night. Game 2 inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Pacers beat the Bucks. That series now again shifts to Milwaukee. That is 8 o'clock coming up on Friday, and we're a little over 24 hours away from the NFL Draft. What is the latest? What could change here? And Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen comments. All of it coming at you. Thanks for spending this Wednesday morning with us right here on The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We heard from Anthony Richardson Sr. yesterday, talking big picture, talking about his necessary improvements. Coming up here in year 3, we'll throw some of that audio your way coming up in a bit, but plenty of reaction last night. Again, it's Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dayton with you here. The rest of this week on the Fan Morning Show. James, it happened probably 9 o'clock hour yesterday, courtesy of The Athletic, an anonymous player poll. One of the questions in the player poll, who was the most overrated player in the NBA? Number 1 on that list was Tyrese Haliburton. When I saw that news and I saw the headline, I immediately opened up my gambling app, and I bet I had a 3-leg parlay. I had an over of 4.5 points for Haliburton in the first quarter. That easily hit. I threw in the 20 points plus 10 assists over. That hit. And then, of course, Pacers money line. That hit. So I wake up this morning very, very happy. And certainly there was some, I would say, candid comments from Rick Carlisle about said poll last night, courtesy of your question.
I heard about this, and the other guys on the list were Jimmy Butler and Giannis. Right? And I want to see the guys' faces that voted those guys. I want to see the faces of those guys. All right? This is a poll. Not everybody even answered in the poll. All right? Guys were able to answer if they wanted to. They were asked on camera or with a microphone. The whole thing's okay? And it's just it's really a shameful thing. It's just a shameful thing. All right? Jimmy Butler would be a finalist for MVP if he had gotten to Golden State a month and a half earlier. I mean, what that guy's done. And Giannis, are you kidding me?
I want to see their faces. I love that. Next time Max Bone gets bit at school, I want to see the faces.
Right? And I want to see the guys' faces.
I was like, man, it's like training day with Denzel Washington. I'm putting cases on all you. Because, man, he was fired up.
He was much more fired up. He was much more fired up than Haliburton was.
He certainly was. And, yeah, I try to treat every question the same. But honest to God, the heart rate kind of went up a little bit because I was thinking, should I ask this? I'm like, you know what? I feel like I have a decent relationship with Rick, through the years and a lot of mutual respect. And everyone's talking about it. So I'm like, there's no way you guys didn't see this or hear about this. And, threw him one at the end. And
print it off and put it in his locker. That's what I was saying yesterday in the 9 o'clock hour.
So it was fun to hear, R-rated Rick, as Dustin DePierre and Tony East have dubbed him at times. And I thought that, again, he defended his star player like any coach would. And then Tyrese comes in with a more measured approach, but also, let it be known he's not changing. He's going to be himself. Doesn't care what anybody thinks. At least not enough to let him change or shift his approach. So I enjoyed it. It was fun to see Rick let loose a little bit. When he leaves the room, there's like this awkward silence like, all right, who's going to get the bleep button together because we can't play that.
So, anyone driving up to Milwaukee on Friday?
Exactly. But I enjoyed it. And again, just to clarify, I got this question a couple of times, Kevin. I didn't interview any of the players for this poll.
Yeah, I guess, can you explain a little bit more? Again,
I want to see the faces of those guys.
90 players were interviewed, right?
Yes.
Anonymously.
Yes, and that was for this question. The entire poll, there's more players involved, but I've done a couple of these now on the NFL side, and there's always those two questions. It's like most overrated team, most overrated player, and those usually get less responses because players don't want to just be mean to others or whatever. But at the same time, it's a conversation that obviously a lot of them are having. I mean, you don't have to do the vote or whatever, but for clarity's sake, I didn't, vote or obviously I didn't vote, but I didn't ask any players to vote because I didn't feel comfortable, not being on the beat full time or being around them a lot and showing up, one time in a month and saying, hey, tell me, who's the most overrated player in the league.
Here comes the hot take guy.
Yeah.
I want to see the faces of those guys.
But, I mean, it certainly led to that, so that was fun.
I love that. Here was Tyrese Haliburton last night on a very similar question.
It didn't impact the way I played today at all. I must be doing something right, if that's the case. I don't have a big speech or comment on it. I mean, all I care about is this locker room and winning games, and we're in position to, go to Milwaukee and continue this series on. So not too worried about that. I know I am. I'm confident in my own skin and not worried about what anybody thinks. My teammates trust me. So does my front office, my coaching staff. So I'm good. I could care less.
I think the audio in
I want
general,
to see the faces of those guys.
and the responses from Rick and Tyrese are like necessary to play.
Rick's like, meet me in the alley.
Literally, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a parking garage underneath Virginia Avenue that I would like to have a word with. But I don't really want to give credence to too much. Like, I mean, how many guys are in the NBA? 500?
About 400, 450.
Okay,
give or take. Yeah.
So 13 dudes. Like, I mean, you don't. Because that's who voted for 13
that's
guys.
The math. Yeah, that's the math.
I mean, it's just, I mean, Tyrese Haliburton was on Team USA. Tyrese Haliburton was all NBA just because he has a funky jump shot and maybe isn't dunking on dudes at the rim like other guys.
I'm telling you, it's because he doesn't score 30 every night or because he didn't play
I think it's
often
how
in the Olympics.
Like, guys are frustrated by how it looks. They're like, wait a minute, he's not a freak athlete? Wait, the jump shot looks like it's kind of like a catapult at times. Like, I think that, and again, part of me is like even saying this out loud. It's like, dude, who gives a bleep? Again, I totally disagree with Tyrese. I knew it would have a little bit of an edge to him last night. And I think you saw that out of the game. I mean, he had 7 and 6 in the first 10 minutes of the game. Obviously, none of that is overrated. I would say Rick's answer more than anything is probably, he really didn't back Tyrese specifically in the end. He really was just like fed up with the poll. He throws in Butler, he throws in Giannis there. That's pretty par for the course with Rick. Think about any time Tyrese has had struggles, James, and we've asked him about Rick, or we've asked him about Ty. I mean, he heavily backs him. I mean, he never is one that's like, hey, we got to go back to the drawing board. He's had, struggles. He's got to get in the gym, I mean, Rick can be very candid, but I feel like whenever he's evaluating or asked about Tyrese specifically, it is always very player-backed. I'm curious of the relationship with Luka, which I think you get two sides of it.
Yeah.
What Luka would think of Rick and what Rick thinks of Luka, if that has impacted his public comments about Tyrese at all.
Yeah, and
maybe not. Maybe he would strongly disagree with that.
But to that point, he gives every player their flowers. And he's done that.
I mean, Mathurin, I think he talks.
No, I meant the great players. I mean, like the elite guys.
Got it.
So he always has a lot of respect. So when, you say, oh, Lillard had an off night, he's like, well, yeah, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the guys that changed the game. Like, he's saying these things without needing to be sort of prompted into it. And so one of the things I do enjoy about getting to know Rick through the years is if you ask him about the history of the game or certain players or what greatness looks like, he will really go, into and break down what all of that means in the context. And, I remember when, Bill Walton unfortunately passed, he gave me or us in the room, like a 6-minute breakdown of one, like the person who's amazing, but also the player. He's like, I know you might remember him from watching a lot of late night, games on ESPN or whatever, but this dude was the best player in the world at one point. And so I think that he gets irritated by that, maybe as a former player himself, when you don't sort of honor or respect different versions of greatness. Because again, Tyrese is scoring 30 a night like, SGA is doing in OKC. Nobody's saying anything. But his dominance looks different, and I think that's fine. I mean, I think that's okay, and it certainly is effective for this team that is now, 2 wins away from going to second round.
Yeah, I expressed, certainly on Monday, Tuesday, I was not worried about game 2. I know it got close there late, and now things shift to game 3. Vegas already has Milwaukee as, I would say, a notable favorite. They're favored by 4.5 in game 3. That was pretty much what Indiana was favored by in these first couple of games. I would think one thing that still gives or should give Pacers fans encouragement as the series shifts to Milwaukee. I thought Haliburton responded really well last night.
Mm-hmm.
I also look at it and say, James, if you had told me at the start of the series, through 2 games, Tyrese Haliburton would be 11 of 32 and 3 of 17 from 3, I'd say, okay, is the series 1-1?
Yeah.
I mean, he is 11 of 32 and 3 of 17 from 3, and you're up 2-0.
Yeah.
And that is, you can spin that in 2 directions. One, you can look at it and say, okay, yeah, for you to make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals, you're going to need Tyrese to be, a notch above that. But at the same time, your other guys not named Haliburton have played great. If I asked you right now, James, who's been the worst Pacer player through 2 games?
Worst Pacer player through 2 games. That's a really. I mean, who would you pick?
I purely ask it to hear you struggle for the first 5 seconds. Because I don't.
It's like there an obvious answer here.
I'm copping out. I want to ask it. I don't want to answer it. I don't know. I don't.
I mean, honestly, my mind went to, let me take some of the deep bench guys, like Thomas Bryant. I can't be mad at Thomas Bryant. He's been fine.
Your bench group, I think, is all individually contributed well. Like, I thought one of the bigger shots last night was Obi in the corner there in the 4th.
Yeah.
And they stuck with Obi, pretty late with that group as well. So, again, I ask that to say, if I asked you that of the Bucks, you would name several guys.
I mean, yeah, Kyle Kuzma missed
Kuzma
2
just
wide
clank
open layups
another one to start the game?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's where
and how about Kevin Porter Jr.? There was a possession.
Dude, that was one of the Kevin Porter Jr. experience is wild.
Oh my goodness! I mean the twisting.
I think he hit the shot clock one time on one of those.
Yeah,
layups.
but then he hit like that 3 at the end of the 3rd quarter buzzer. But then he also had like that driving, twisting, like backwards layup he threw up. And there's a possession in the second half. Can't remember if it was 3rd quarter or 4th quarter. Giannis is posting up, and it is Giannis. His hand is huge. He is the tallest guy on the floor.
Porter says, "I got this."
He calls his own number. He looks off Giannis, a top 75 player of all time, and jacks a contested 3. And I was like, man, he's out here playing. This is 2K. What are you doing? And you know what makes it bad, Kevin? They're so inept on offense outside of their stars that they really couldn't take him off the floor. Because honestly, I was thinking if he was on the Pacers, he'll be on the bench so fast and he wouldn't get back in.
Well, yeah, that's the issue. Ryan Rollins started game 1, didn't get in last night because of Lillard. And speaking of Lillard, Evan is asking, about Ben Shepherd. He went to the scores table there late. I'm trying to think. I think it was Lillard. Lillard was starting to get going there in the first. Yeah. And Shepherd went to the scores table, and then Rick pulled him back once Lillard went out.
Yeah.
So I am on Shepherd watch, I think, for game 3 or 4. Because, Lillard, I thought in the first half looked a lot better than I expected him to look. And then the second half, I thought he just flat out hit a wall. I know he hit the deep 3 to cut it to 2. But I thought, missing a month and a half, 37 minutes of playtime, I was stunned Lillard played that much. So that is something I think to keep an eye on as the series shifts. Coming up, 8 o'clock. I believe I'm seeing this correctly. And right now, we don't even know if a Game 5 will occur. But Game 3 we know is Friday at 8. Game 4, brace yourself, folks, 9:30 Eastern on Sunday night. Boys, I see 9:30 on a Sunday like once every month.
You and Jeff are going to be going to bed at the same time.
Oh, man. God, well, hopefully not in the same bed, but yeah.
You never know.
Now, if it gets to a Game 5, which obviously Milwaukee would have to win one of these, if I'm reading this correctly, if the Pacers Bucks are playing a Game 5, and if the Magic Celtics are playing a Game 5, which it's no foregone conclusion that the Magic extended here, the Pacers Bucks would tip at 6 p.m. next Tuesday. 6 p.m. inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse if it went to a Game 5. And you'd have the same song and dance as last night. And by that I mean FanDuel, NBA TV. And I know some people ran into issues with that last night, but you watch the Pacers just like a regular season game. What'd you make of Richardson yesterday? Anything stand out? Anthony Richardson, Colts back off-season program.
Pretty candid about what he needs to work on. He was telling us, hey, everyone knows, and we can find the audio, but he was breaking down his game and being a little bit more thorough than I thought he had been in the past. He kind of said what everyone thinks. He's like, yeah, I got to get my footwork together. I got to just, kind of clean up my mechanics, because he said, everyone knows I can rip the ball. And I'm like, yes, we've seen it. I mean, the throw to Alec Pierce in week 1 is probably the greatest throw I've ever seen in my life. Now, granted, I haven't watched a ton of NFL football as far as being a beat writer. I'm 3 or 4 years in at this point. But that throw was amazing. But every play can't be that throw. You have to make the layups. And he kind of, hammered that himself. He was talking about his base, his wide end, when he gets in his stance, and his follow through, all the things that matter. And so, maybe that has finally kind of resonated with him, but also not to dismiss it, but it is a lot of lip service until we see it. And then I also wonder, Kevin, I think you pointed this out earlier this week. If you worked in your mechanics all offseason, how well do you have it to where you're not thinking about doing it?
Right. So it's not robotic.
Yeah, like you can't play that way. Because when you play, I mean, I can hear my high school coach now telling me, James, your shot is flat, and it's still flat to this day. I'm sorry, Coach Stark. It never worked out.
That's good for the basement here with the lower roof.
Exactly. I don't want to take any lights out. I've learned from
our gym.
Our guy Scotty, man. Scotty's got a nice jumper, by the way. It's flat, but it swishes.
Yeah.
Mine, it gets a little
can't
ratty.
have Miles Turner's jump shot in our basement.
So, but he talked about that. I have to be a little bit more, not a little bit, but like I have to be much more cleaned up. And I thought that was very honest of him.
I thought the phrase that stood out to me specific, because that's what I was most curious about yesterday. What would he say specifically about his own necessary improvements?
Yeah.
Footwork.
That's what you want to know the most.
Right.
And
That's the only thing that I really cared about.
Yeah, it matters.
Footwork was something he harped on a whole lot. But I thought he had a phrase that I sat there and thought to myself, boy, I'm nodding my head. He said, I've got to be calmer in the pocket. And when I hear that, certainly you can hear that and think, all right, you have sped up footwork. But I think there's too many times where he is not confident with where to go with the football. And to me, that speeds you up, that gets you a little nervy, that gets you a little jittery, and next thing you know, you resort back to, oh yeah, I've got the big cannon, let me throw the 98-mile-per-hour fastball, and it's not on target.
Yeah.
So I just think, can you throw with anticipation? Like for me, it's kind of twofold with Richardson and accuracy. He's got to throw with better touch, but I think he's got to throw with more anticipation at times too. First read's not there. I know based off this coverage, the second read's probably not going to be there. Boom, let's get to the third read maybe a half second earlier. And again, find easier in the passing game. Be more boring in the passing offense. Be more methodical in the passing offense.
Shane Stikcen. He wants consistency. And what else stood out about what he said in relation to the quarterback position? And in my mind, I'm like, Anthony, he kept saying, we have to be able to move the ball. We have to be able to move the ball. And when you can't move the ball, you obviously can't have sustained success, especially in the NFL. I mean, you cannot live off a diet of, we're going to, that literally that week one game from last year, I think Anthony had 3 completions of over 50 yards.
Yeah, he had like 9 completions for the whole game.
And it was, they were in the game because of it. He's, had, I believe, 2 like super long touchdown passes. But that's not it's not reality. You're not going to win like that consistently.
So it's Rich Nye, great question from the legend yesterday, WTHR. Motivated or disappointed, Anthony Richardson, that year 3 you're in a quarterback competition?
It's different. Everybody can look at the situation differently. I would just like to say I'm blessed. Honestly, I still have an opportunity to be in the NFL. I still have an opportunity to go out there and compete and win the job for this team. So I'm just blessed, and I'm excited to just continue to work. And, it kind of feels like I just got drafted again. I'm just excited to still be here. Like I said, I'm blessed, man.
When he said that last part, it feels like I just got drafted again. I think he means the hunger.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous if it's also fundamentally. Because this gets back to the point you brought up a few minutes ago, James. He is doing some things differently with his footwork and needing to be calmer in the pocket. Will he get enough reps this offseason to ingrain that? So when week 1 rolls around, the red jersey comes off, are you not robotic? And that's what makes, for me, this quarterback competition very difficult, because you have two, like, all I hear is, man, Daniel Jones is consistent. He has a good completion percentage. Guys, Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback.
No,
he needs improvement.
He throws it from me
Daniel
to you.
Jones is consistently bad.
Yeah.
That's what he is. Okay, is he more consistent than Anthony Richardson? Sure. But that's like saying,
if you look at it, he's had one good year in the
Ryan
NFL.
Bowen's more attractive than Kevin Bowen. It's not really saying much here. So
I think you're very handsome, Kevin.
Well, and to be fair, Ryan
got the flow going today.
Ryan's good looking. Guys, I'm not gonna lie. I'm so wound up with this playoff basketball. I just woke up and showered today.
Who are you? You don't know what's going on.
It's a Wednesday. I never shower on a Wednesday.
We got fresh Kevin Bowen in the studio.
Maybe I knew Jeff wouldn't be here.
I can smell it.
I'm rocking my, little Haliburton Matherin.
There you go.
Little old school NBA Jam shirt here. I'm feeling good.
I am old enough to have played NBA Jam. Oh, it was
NBA Jam was
such
so
a
good.
great game, but it was so frustrating.
You just aged yourself so much in the opposite way to our audience. But literally, all of a sudden, I'm like putting soap on. I'm like, damn, I didn't even need to do this.
Oh, I'm in the shower. How did that happen?
Literally.
But now if they lose like game 3, you're going to be going to like unshowered, unshaven.
I probably do. I probably do need a shave. What'd you make of that? Felt like I got drafted again.
I didn't take it as much as like the fundamental on-field stuff.
Yeah.
I took it as
and again, I think it's hunger.
Yeah, this is a chance for me to sort of prove myself again, or to kind of silence those who might think that I don't deserve this opportunity, I'm not ready for it, and part of it maybe is just getting healthy in the offseason and just resetting mentally and getting away from all the noise, whereas you come back and it's like, okay. And he said, I've competed. And honestly, Kevin, you guys joke about me being young, and I certainly enjoy it, but he makes me feel old because I believe somebody asked him, hey, when's the last time you had to compete, or what can you draw from your previous experiences of having to compete for the starting job? And the first thing he says is like, well, in high school I had to, win my job. And I was like, high school? But again, for him, that wasn't that long ago.
Right, he's 22 years old.
I was like, wow, okay. And then to be real, I'm like, I don't care about what happened in high school, because when you're an athlete like that, you're going to win the starting job at 99% of high schools in America. College, talked about, facing, I believe it was Emory Jones at the time, and trying to beat him out for the job. And I might be getting the name wrong, actually.
No. That is right.
Okay. And then on top of that, I think this is like the real competition in a sense. So I take it as him saying, I got to prove myself. I got to go out there and win this thing. And, we'll see where the chips fall. And he did sound like he was very confident, very calm. You know me, I don't have a lot of tact sometimes. The first question was, hey, Daniel Jones is your teammate now. What's that been like? We all want to know. He says he's had conversations with him. He's going to learn from him, but there's going to be that tension there, and I think he'll embrace it.
He was a busy man yesterday in the building at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, also over at West 56th Street. Stephen Holder joins us next.
Pacers. Turner with a three, and Milwaukee is reeling early, a minute and a half in. Loose ball in the Milwaukee forecourt. Turner stole it at the other end. A right-hand slam for Siakam. Nembhard on the wing. Now retreats, moves forward down the right side, picks up the bounce, and a nifty bounce pass into the lane. Found Turner, who dunked it. Now McConnell pulls up, left side, dumps it to the top, and Siakam hits a three. McConnell with excellent plays at both ends. They're on a 13-point run, and they've cut it to 2. Pacers in desperate need of a field goal. Here's Haliburton to the left wing. Sends it outside. Siakam gives to Nembhard. 2:16 to go. Nembhard left edge. Shot clock down to 8. Nembhard played by Antetokounmpo. Driving it right hand. Kicks it right side. Siakam is open. And that is a much-needed three. Nembhard down the left side. Confronted by Antetokounmpo. The shot clock at 6. He backs it up and buries a three from out on the left edge, right in front of Doc Rivers, who calls a timeout.
Andrew Nembhard, absolutely fearless.
The building was as loud as I've ever heard it. And, I've been in here for the finals games in 2000 and a lot of conference finals games, and it's never been louder than it was tonight.
Well, it's playoff time when our next guest adds a little Pacers duties to the resume, and certainly Stephen Holder's been a busy man this week, so we appreciate his time here on this Wednesday morning. We will get to the NFL draft here upcoming shortly, but Stephen, for the second time here in this playoff series inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse last night. Let's start here. Stephen, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am proud of myself because when I was on the air on SportsCenter yesterday talking about the series, I did not refer to Damian Lillard as Anthony Richardson, which I was worried about because I literally was coming from the Pacers and coming from the Colts, going to the Pacers, and I was like, all right, remember where you are and what you're doing. So anyway, sorry.
There you are driving down 69, just saying driving down 65, saying to yourself, it's Damian Lillard now. It's Damian Lillard now. It's Damian
Right.
Lillard now. It's Damian
Basketball.
Lillard
No,
now.
seriously.
I guess rap wise, was it Lillard Haliburton that angle for you, or kind of what was the general takeaway from last night for you?
I do think I think I've been spending too much time around James because I love the smoke, right? I will say
Pettiness
that.
rules.
and I love Haliburton's approach to it. It's like, hey, look, we're just trying to win. But hey, if there's an altercation, hey, it's pretty fun. So I love he understands it's a game and that it's entertainment and that there is an entertainment component to it. But this is very serious for sure, right? I mean, a lot is on the line here, and despite all of that, like there's an edge to this team this year that I don't recall seeing. You saw it. You just played the clip, right, where they gave up a 13-0 run, and you're thinking, okay, they're about to blow this thing, and they slammed the door. And it's what we've talked about, I think, the last couple of times I've been on here, which is they have a mettle to them this year, late in games. And this was not the way you drew it up, certainly, to give up that run. But they don't let you just have your way late in games. They figure out a way, and they get it done. And that's – you have to do that in the playoffs, and they're going to have to do it on the road. I went back and I looked at their road performance in the playoffs last season. I mean, go back to the Knicks series. I believe of the 4 road games, they won 1, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I think that game 7. I think they were 2-7 on the road in the playoffs last year, despite getting to the conference finals. So this is where you make your money. Go on the road, and let's see if you can get it done.
And Stephen Holder, ESPN, with us here before we shift gears to the Colts. And James, I kind of want to bring you in for this as well. How real do you think the Haliburton Lillard stuff is? And I guess I'll throw a couple of events potentially at you. You go back to the in-season tournament. Haliburton hits the shot in Vegas, does the Dame time celebration.
Mm-hmm.
I weirdly go back to the All-Star game. Do you remember that? Like, Haliburton goes off early. I don't know if it's like All-Star, like game 101, but there's the thought of, hey, let the hometown guy kind of cook. Lillard then like dominates the ball for the rest of the game. He wins MVP. Again, if you like want to discredit any of this,
I mean, granted, nobody played. That was one of the worst All-Star games ever.
Right, but Lillard wins MVP.
Yeah.
You know, Haliburton doesn't. And then I don't know. Maybe I put a little bit more on the Team USA aspect. Lillard wins gold with Team USA in Tokyo, and then Haliburton, I guess you could say, takes a spot on Team USA this time around. So do you think any of that is real, or this is just two very good guards going back and forth and wanting to chirp?
You know what? I'll let Holder answer this because he legitimately asked this exact question to Haliburton after the game.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say that there was anything particular. He said it was just, two guys who love ball and want to win. But it does seem like it's repeatedly the two of them. It seems like there's more. It does feel like there is more. I don't think we can assume, but we can go by what we see. I take him at his word to a degree, right? That this is just, two competitors. But all I'm saying is, I mean, there were moments out there where it kind of felt, there was a couple of them where it kind of felt like Haliburton was like, where's he at? All right. I want to hit this shot in his face,
Right,
and
right. Yeah, they had the back and forth in the first quarter
personal.
where they each hit a three in each other's face.
It feels personal, you know what I mean? And what's behind that, I don't know, but it does feel somewhat personal. I love what Tyrese said. Like, people talk about rivalries being dead, and he's like, hey, here's one. I think it's great. It was great for the game. It's great for us as viewers. So, I want more.
To pivot a little bit back to what you were saying at the beginning, you had he was looking fly yesterday, by the way, for those, listening. You had this what was it? I don't know, I don't know if it was purple or reddish kind of suit and
wine.
Yeah, wine.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, he had a wine, the pink shirt. He looked very Valentine's Day vibes. And I asked him when he showed up at the Colts facility, hours before the Pacers game. I was like, man, are you going in here for a date or something? Like, did I miss something? I got on sweatpants and a hoodie. But in all seriousness, Stephen,
are you saying he's dressed not like Mike Chappell?
Not like Mike Chappell.
Okay,
Me and Mike Chappell are kindred spirit because we don't wear belts until it's game day.
You have a comparable number of sweatpants. That's true.
Exactly. But, you were the one who really pressed, and I respect you for this, Shane Stikcen, when he continued to say the more consistent quarterback will win the job. You really pushed back and kind of challenged him and laid it out there. Hey, Anthony's, more explosive, but, very inconsistent. Daniel Jones is consistent. He's not explosive. So can you just break down what you were trying to glean from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not an effort to put him on the spot. It's more to make it clear, like, hey, there's some gravity to what you are saying here, what you appear to be saying. Because my only interpretation from that, the only possible interpretation in my mind, is that, okay, you at numerous occasions we tried to clarify. All right, you're saying the guy who's more consistent. Well, that's pretty clear who's more consistent here. One guy's a playmaker. One guy is more dependable down to down. And I was like, okay, let's just make sure we understand each other. So that's why, like, for the third time, I went back to him and said, hey, we know who is who here. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Now, he did not truly answer the question in that instance, but here's what happened. He also did not bend over backwards to say, hey, look, you know what? I think Anthony can be a very consistent quarterback. I think he'll get there. He'll improve, whatever. He could have said that, and he did not. He just kind of brushed it off. So I don't know. I think if you want to go very far with this, and I'm not prepared to, but if you want to go a step further, you could, in your mind, say, he sounds like he's made up his mind, or at least at this moment, right, until something changes. But I don't know. I don't know what to take away from that, but I know what it sounds like. It sounds like what he described to us as the guy who fits what he's talking about is Daniel Jones.
I'll tell you what, Steven, I was thinking, boy, Anthony, those mechanics better be right. Like, you better be able to make the layups, all of the, free throws, if you want to keep using basketball references. That has to be a big part of your game, because if it's not, I mean, he was like, we have to be able to move the ball. And if you go back to certain stretches of last season, they were not able to move the ball, Steven, hardly at all. And, to pivot a little bit and kind of push this conversation forward, The draft is tomorrow. I've seen you so much this week. I'm like, Jesus, I love you, but my goodness, we spent too many hours together, writing about, Indiana sports yesterday. But, right. But what you think of Stikcen maybe just telling us the truth? He's like, hey, we're going to look to, possibly draft a pass-catching tight end. I was like, well, he didn't say use the word draft, but he said, we'll look to add one. And I'm like, well, the easiest way to add one is via the draft. And, Ballard has always hammered home this point of we don't necessarily have to, draft for needs and this and that. Brother, you have drafted for needs because that's what most GMs do. So, yeah, your thoughts on Stikcen maybe being a little more candid than he ever is.
I would agree that he was very candid there. I mean, he kind of typically would act like, oh, we'll figure something out. Like he just downplays things. He did not there. And I think kudos to him because, number one, duh, okay, that's the first thing. And then secondly, I think it's also a recognition maybe on his part that he needs one. You know what I mean? Just as a play caller. Maybe he needs that. And so maybe that's a message. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But I do think, for all of the doubts that Shane created in terms of his approach to being a head coach last year, because I thought there were missteps along the way. I still think he's still a good offensive coach and a good offensive mind. And I think if you give him that piece, I think he can do a lot with it. And so I would say give him the pieces he needs, and I think he can get a lot out of those guys. If you go back and look at Shane Steichen's history as a play caller, he's always had a tight end, except in Indianapolis. He's always had tight ends who were very productive in his offenses. I don't think that's an accident. I think he knows how to get a lot out of that position. The Philly ecosystem has been good at that as well, and where he comes from, they did a good job of it there. But he also did it before that in Los Angeles as well. So, that was a product of personnel to a degree, but it's also a product of Shane, I think, in his approach to play calling. So it can only help the quarterback, help the coordinator, and help the offense. So, hey, look, let's not overcomplicate this, right? Now, there's a scenario where maybe it's not ideal for them, and maybe both tight ends are gone or something. I don't know. But if they're there, I think it's going to be a tough decision to pass on one of those top two tight ends. I really strongly feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, with the Chargers, they have the Antonio Gates rule. If it's man, you throw it at Antonio Gates, and you don't overthink it, to further your point. Stephen Holder, ESPN, with us here. Okay, Stephen, tomorrow night, 3 piles you can choose from. The pick is a tight end. The pick is any other position. The pick is a trade back. Which pile?
I think if the tight ends are there, it's a tight end.
Yeah.
If it's not, now trade back becomes a possibility.
The only thing that gives me pause, Steven, sorry to interrupt, but if one of those offensive linemen were to fall, like it seems like there's this consensus right now, 4-ish offensive linemen in the first dozen picks. If one of them were to be there, a little bit a la Latu last year, that's probably the only thing that gives me pause. If not, I'm probably in lockstep with you.
Yeah, I actually would be okay with that too, because I do think we have a little bit sort of glossed over the offensive line this offseason, just in talking about the Colts. I'm not saying we've completely glossed over it, but I wonder if we've talked about it enough, okay? So I would be fine with that, and I think there's a case to be made there. There's also a very, very strong case to make that the defensive line needs to be dealt with, just given the contract situations of the personnel that they have, the age of the defensive tackles, all of that, right? I mean, if you fast forward a year from now, the situation on that defensive line, it could be pretty urgent, right? So addressing it now would not be a bad thing. But is it the first priority? I don't know. I don't know that it is. So, like you said, unless there's a golden opportunity at offensive line, I think trade down becomes a real possibility for them, because you don't even have to trade back that far. Remember, now you can trade back to a maybe early second or what have you, and now you're looking for those positions of depth in the draft. Tight end's one of them, right? Defensive line, there's lots of guys there, so they can still hit some key spots later in the draft and still come away with what they need. So we'll see.
Steven, last one. We appreciate the time because I know it was a late night for you. Are you expecting to hear from Jim Irsay at all during draft weekend? That is usually an annual thing on Saturday, the draft.
Expecting, I wouldn't say expecting, I would say hopeful. Definitely hopeful. He's going to be there, and it's just too important to him, right? So he's been a little scarce lately. That is true, but he's going to be there as far as I know, and we'll be down the hall. So let's just knock it out. Is what I say.
Stephen Holder, he has been extremely busy on both beats here from a Pacers and Colts standpoint. He will be tired as hell if James Boyd come about 3 o'clock on Saturday. Probably me as well, frankly. Stephen, we'll see you out there coming up tomorrow.
All right, guys. Looking forward to it.
It's Stephen Holder right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. If one of those offensive linemen were to be there, James, the Armand Membus of the world, some have said even Kelvin Banks out of Texas, if one of those guys is there, I will go, and I've already done it on our website, I will go Colston Loveland as my official pick. But that's where I do hit the pause button a little bit. If one of those offensive linemen are there.
Yeah, and we know how much Chris Ballard loves the trenches.
They did lose 2 starters on the offensive line.
Yeah, it matters.
They haven't, added anyone yet here in free agency. And make of the Brayton Smith situation how you want to make of it, even if you just want to put all of the off-the-field mental illness, leaving the team for a month plus last year, he still is in a contract year.
Yeah.
Upcoming.
So you need a long-term answer there,
as he nears the age of 30.
Yeah, I agree there. And just real quick, I think that we have always said this on the air. The lineman pick, particularly on offense, is never the sexy one in mock drafts or in real life. But, I go back to Mark's Bears, last year, there was so much hype off the skill position players. And you reread everything, and you heard everything, Mark. Yep. And they went out there, and it's like, can you block anybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got the sexy picks in the quarterback and the wide receiver. But like, there's no one up front to guard, so you're kind of putting a lot of eggs in the Caleb Williams basket to try to not be killed back there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's not a sexy pick, but it's a much needed pick. And if you get it right, you're set for the next 10-plus years.
Exactly. And you don't want that conversation to dominate how you evaluate your quarterback play. It's like, well, both quarterbacks, and they've had, more downs and ups in their career. I think that's a fair statement to say. But is it even fair to them to try to say, oh, you're the guy, you're not the guy, if you're constantly, having a guy in your face because you didn't address right guard? Something to consider.
All right, coming up much more on all of this. I think a little look ahead to tomorrow. We might do a little mock draft on air, maybe a couple of them throughout the course of the day. We'll play around with that and see if, all right, Mark will give us a little rundown of what's left at pick 14. Let's see what you would do here. We'll do that coming up tomorrow on the draft show, if you will. Mark Dykton, let's check it now.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
The start was great. It was aided by a Kyle Kuzma clanker, too, and a nice roll for Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith. And the Pacers led throughout, and then it got dicey. 115-113. The ball finds Pascal Siakam, a huge one from the right wing for the Pacers All-Star. And then the step back with Giannis on him. If it's that end of the floor, it's the left wing, and Andrew Nembhard's got it late clock. That might be a grenade for some. For Andrew Nembhard, he absolutely relishes it. He put the dagger in the Bucks. The Pacers are up 2-0. Rick Carlisle, I would say, walked the line last night of, sure, he was happy about the win, but also acknowledged the close game situation. Growth for his team, but Game 3 certainly awaits.
The games that we were winning were clutch games. And so, we've got some experience with this. And you just got to assume that playoff games are going to be clutch games. That's just the nature of them. And so you got to embrace that, and we've got to be prepared to execute. And sometimes executing isn't calling a play. Executing is being true to your capabilities as a ball movement team, and that's where we're going to have to be better in the next game.
James, through 2 games, I think the Bucks hope and pray that the Pacers just miss shots. They can't guard them at all. The Pacers are getting wide open looks. Even the zone, which I thought at times in the regular season gave the Pacers trouble. I don't think it's an issue if the Pacers aren't getting open looks. It's just at times they're kind of like a little bit like, wait, should I be the one, or can we get even a more open look from this? So single-digit turnovers in each of these first 2 games to the Pacers. That is rare air, to quote Jim Irsay.
I want to see the faces of those guys.
I mean, 3 words, point of attack. That is what has been hammered home for the Bucks. My guy Eric Name at The Athletic was asking Giannis about it. They cannot stop anybody at the point of attack. And there's a drive in the first quarter there, or early in the game, where Benedict Mather went straight down the middle, and I was like, you could have drove a car through there. So, yeah, they better figure that out fast if they want to get back in the series.
Jim Boylan, the Pacers assistant, was interviewed at halftime by JJ. I always enjoy those interviews with a variety of Pacers assistants, and he said something along the lines of, like, Milwaukee needs threes to win. And it sounds like a very simple statement, but James, as I sit here on this Wednesday morning, the only way the Bucks win a game in the series is if they get hot and hit 23s. Like, I don't see them holding Indiana to 102, or, you know, last night out west, we saw the Lakers and T-Wolves both under 100. We saw the Rockets and the Warriors the other night, both under 100. I don't see the Bucks doing that. I mean, it would have to be a horrific night offensively for the Pacers to even sniff being around there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, again, you've played your brand of basketball so far. You ain't had to change much to keep this thing rolling.
Mark Dykton, was that a little false start on your Cubs
I don't know
music?
what the hell that was, to be quite honest.
Pacers again up 2-0, game 3 game 3 Friday, 8 o'clock. Lakers did even up at 1-1 last night. The Thunder continue to just dominate the Grizzlies. They're up 2-0. In that series, we'll get 3 games tonight. It will be the Celtics, Jason Tatum questionable. It will be the Cavs and the Heat, and it will be Rockets Warriors game 2 as they look to even that one up. Houston at home. Major League Baseball from yesterday. It pains me to say it, but boy, that was quite the entertaining one in Wrigley. You know, I was staying up, watching the Pacers post-game coverage there, and I was struck by the comeback for the Cubs. So, Mark Dykton, congrats.
They have done very well, especially against the Dodgers. Like I said, they've had a murderer's row schedule. They played the Dodgers, I feel like, a dozen times already this month, but they've gotten the best of them. So that was another fun one at Wrigley. So far so good, and your Reds not so fortunate. And we're getting told by Alex Golden to mention the Cardinals score more often because he is a Cardinals fan. I'm like, I thought I liked you, Alex. Don't tell me that. I don't need that information. You can keep that to yourself.
Your day out of the NFL draft, recapping a wild Pacer playoff win last night. Alex Golden wants us to mention the freaking Cardinals. What are they, 500, Mark?
I mean, and they won 10-4 against the Braves. Congratulations.
Whoop-de-doo.
I don't care about the Cardinals at all.
Elite baseball fans, the Cardinals. Who cares? Oval testing over at IMS the next 2 days. Cars on track. Great sound, great weather. You got to love that here. So busy. All 34 drivers in this year's running of the Indianapolis 500 scheduled to be out there for the oval testing. 9:30 today, 10 o'clock tomorrow, the 2 times. I hope I have that right. I need to double check that again. 10 o'clock today. I stand corrected. 9:30 tomorrow, IndyCar's YouTube channel. You can check that out. I believe Alan Bestwick and James Hinchcliffe. On that, Indiana's added another guard in the transfer portal, Jason Drake out of Drexel. What do you make of all the mid-majors? Do you look at that as like they've produced, they've got chips on their shoulders, they're ready to rise to this level? Do you view that as, I'm curious, when they see 17,000 versus 1,700 in a gym?
Yeah, I can't expect all of them to just immediately put up the numbers they had before, and obviously a lot of that has to do with you maybe having a diminished role or more shared role at IU. But yeah, I don't expect every single guy to be the same level of player because of different pressure, different stakes. But I do like some of just the raw data that some of these guys are putting up. For example, last year, this guy Jason Deuce Drake shot 39% on threes on 101 attempts. 87% at the free throw line on 74 attempts. Like, numbers like that tend to make me think, okay, yeah, you might not be getting the same volume or you might not be the main guy in the action, but when you shoot like that, it is very hard for me to see you falling off a cliff just because you went to a higher level at the rim and still 10 feet.
Yeah, I would say this in general. An issue for Indiana basketball in recent years has been not enough skilled guards. And if you look at the makeup, on paper, you're seeing guards with skill. So that general approach certainly needed to change. They still need several big dudes here as I guess the portal starts to quiet down a little bit here, so that needs to be a focus here of Darren DeVries. But yes, on paper, again, plenty of skilled guards, mostly from the mid-major level, coming to Bloomington next year. All right, on the other side, what do you make of Shane Stikcen and Anthony Richardson's comments from yesterday and much more from Game 2 last night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse? The Pacers are talking. They're also walking, and they're up 2-0 right now over the Bucks. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton on a Wednesday.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
$123, $115 last night's inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
We'll play it the next segment.
Oh, man. We got some tension brewing in the studio, you all, for those listening.
No. Kevin and I both had brain fart.
We might see some furniture moving up in here.
Yeah, I was thrown off a little bit by the reentry. Well,
I was too. I'm like, that's quite the song then.
Yeah, we'll explain a little bit more here later. Thank you to Stephen Holder.
Next segment, we'll do it.
We got a busy week here with the Pacers series. Now shifts up to the Bucks in Milwaukee. 8 o'clock coming up Friday night. Anything you saw last night that makes you a little bit worried about getting one on the road, James?
Not necessarily. I thought they knocked down their free throws pretty well, too, last night. It was like a perfect 19 of 19 from the line. I'm just curious to see how certain guys
I guess, does that
respond to
worry you? Not to interrupt, but does that work? Like,
will you get the same,
will you get the same, if you look at it, as much as I want to sit here and say, man, Nesmith, Nembhard, Turner, they've been great for you. Does that translate, like, does 55, 60% from three translate on the road? That's always my big question in the playoffs generally is, like, do your role players still play like that away from home?
I think my thing is, can you grow up a bit more? Because I talked earlier in the show about how I feel like they're just not letting any team punk them. But then on top of that, your road record last year in the playoffs was not great. What was I think it was like 2-7 or something like that. Can you grow up even more and sort of sustain your level of play on the road? And I get it. You maybe aren't going to play as well, but can you make sure it isn't so much of a dip where, you're having to play these longer series and hoping that you can get back home and get it done? Now, obviously, they won Game 7 on the road last year. I get all that. But again, it's better to get out ahead of a series and not have to play from behind.
Marcus played this re-entry here to start each hour, and in it, you have Mark Boyle saying something effective like, hey, Pacers are up 8-0 and the Bucks are reeling. I thought the start from last night shouldn't be overlooked. I know Milwaukee cut it to 2 late, but if you hear the Bucks talk after the game, they're like, we were gassed. Like, you put so much pressure on the Bucks to then be perfect the rest of the game. I thought the start to the first quarter and the start to the third quarter were 2 sequences that we should pay more attention to. The Bucks should have been the hungrier team last night. They should have played with more urgency to start each half. They should have been the ones getting loose balls. And frankly, they once again looked scared, embarrassed. I mean, Kuzma's clanking point-blank shot. Even Lopez missed one at the rim early in a game, and that ignites your home crowd. It absolutely ignites your home crowd. And right now we sit here 96 minutes into this series, 2 games, and the Pacers have led for like 94 minutes of this series. I mean, that I just think psyche-wise has to just be so demoralizing, and the Bucks are now climbing uphill the rest of the game. They got to be perfect, and that's way too much pressure, I think, to put on yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that they can't let the rope go too far, because as I watched the game unfold, and credit to the Bucks for even digging back in and cutting to 2 points, but there were a couple of moments there where I'm thinking, man, if they don't stay tethered, this will rip apart. This will not be a game, in a few minutes. And they don't have the luxury of catching fire or getting some generated offense off the bench to sort of jumpstart you. They don't have that luxury. Where the Pacers, we've seen it. I mean, we've seen this movie 1,000 times, I feel like, this past year, where they started slow, they get a spark from somebody, Jarris or Benedict or TJ McConnell, who's done it for a couple of years now, and they get back into the game. The Bucks do not have that. They have to start well, stay attached, and then, hope that, similar to last night, you're in the game with a few minutes left, you can try to steal one. But it still feels like they're fighting this uphill battle because they're just playing a better team.
Yeah, I'm curious, will they start to stagger Lillard and Giannis more? They sat both of them last night
and
at
I was
times.
like,
I was stunned by that. And honestly, if Portis doesn't have a heroic night, I mean, they don't even – I mean, I know I'm probably not allowed to say it, and I can hear the Bobby Sucks chant rain in my ear. Bobby Portis was great last night. Great last night. And honestly, I thought he was going to get a tech there early, but he was one that actually kind of he kind of separated Siakam and Gary Trent there early in the first quarter. I'm like, this isn't the Bobby Portis that I know here. So Do we see more Portis? Because I think he has certainly been the better fit than Lopez here through the first 2 games. I'm curious this, James. Late clock, fourth quarter. Let's say final 3 minutes of a game.
You giving the ball to me?
Well,
I'm gonna get you a bucket.
Again, if we're in the basement of MS, or I should say Radio 1 here, and that ceiling's a little creeping low, I do like your bullet of a jump shot.
Thank you.
To be able to go in there. Where would you rank Nembhard on the list of Pacer players you'd want to get the ball?
So I'll throw a caveat in there. In the playoffs, the list probably changes a little bit. I mean, I love Mather in late game. He usually can do some things well for you. Obviously, Tyrese is your leader. Pascal hits some big shots. But Nembhard, as of late,
I mean, Nembhard's 3 on the list. He's above Matherin, right?
Yeah. I would have to put him there. And honestly,
so Siakam, Haliburton, you could probably pick either, frankly.
Yeah, but
depending where they catch it on the floor.
Can we throw another caveat in there? Is there 5 seconds left on the shot clock?
Seriously.
Because the dude, it's like he's so calm and he's so sound. And then on top of that, he's unafraid. I mean, I don't know if and it probably does because he had a lot of texts this past year, but his equilibrium never really shifts.
Yeah, last night was the most. Remember when he threw the ball at Gobert earlier in the season?
And
I was like,
I will defend that because that was a BS foul on him.
But it was one of those things where I'm kind of looking around like, did he just do that?
Yeah,
because we aren't used to that. Last night he was really chirpy late.
Yeah,
kind of after he hit the shot, which I certainly get that. I should probably ask this of Jeremiah Johnson. I'm curious if he thought this. JJ interviewed Siakam at the end of the game, and Siakam, he asked him about Nembhard, and Siakam says he's a tough, and he kind of paused, and he goes, he's a tough kid. And I wonder if, in my mind, and maybe this is where my brain goes, I thought Siakam wanted to say he's a tough SOB. That's where I thought he wanted to go with Nembhard, of that dude is just wired differently. And think back to Rick Carlisle with us yesterday.
Yeah.
And Rick told the story about the NBA Draft Combine a couple years ago where Nembhard gets hurt on the first day. And we are used to this, certainly NFL. We see it at the Senior Bowl a lot. We see it in the NBA Draft Combine. A player gets hurt, they just pull out. No. I'm not taking part in any more drills. Yeah. I'm not going to risk myself to further injury. I'm not going to get exposed out there. And Nembhard plays the next day.
Yeah, and to give some context to that setting, unlike obviously NFL, you're not going to be playing games in front of scouts. You have the East-West Shrine Bowl, all the things like that, or the Senior Bowl. Most guys aren't playing in a game live in front of these, GMs and coaches. But when I went to the NBA scouting combine, in Chicago, they're playing, and you might have Rob Pelinka sitting 3 rows up. You might have, I believe there was one day because Bronny was in it in the NBA draft, LeBron sitting there. You're in a setting where it's not fans. It's you and a bunch of dudes trying to make a living, and some guys will be like, you know what? I don't want to affect my stock. I don't want to mess up my stock. He was so confident where he was like, you know what? I'm a ball player. And again, he might not have tested that great, but when he went out there, he played really well. And that was one of the takeaways that we had in the moment. I mean, not saying this was before they drafted him. A lot of people, when I talked to at the league at the time, were like, man, Nembhard went out there and he played well. Did you see that Nembhard guy? He was running the offense. And again, you're playing freelance basketball. You're not running your offense from, Gonzaga and Florida where you played at. You're kind of going out there and just making it happen with a bunch of guys you don't know. And he still had a pretty good feel for the offense in the game. And obviously that gravitated the Pacers towards drafting him.
What did Shane Stikcen have to say about offensive improvements yesterday? The answer rather organic, perhaps telling, as we are 36 hours away from the NFL draft. We'll hit on that coming up on the other side. This is the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton with you here on a Wednesday.
listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Little jam here, courtesy of Sarah Grace Monroe. Shout out to one of her teachers named Mark. He reached out yesterday to Mark Dykton and myself.
Mark with a C, too, so
Mark
strong
with a
name.
C.
Very strong.
Would
like
you
that.
play this song? It's Message in a Bottle against Sarah Grace Monroe. She's off to Anderson University coming up this fall. Study audio engineering and sound design. Mark Dyke, that was a nice little jam, Message in a Bottle.
Yeah, I was wondering why you looked at me weird because we were supposed to play it in the last segment, and I played Master P instead. So you're like, wait, this can't be the song. I'm like, this is definitely not the song. I will play it in this next one. So yes,
Master
very
P,
good tune though.
Sarah Grace Monroe. It's all
It's all the same.
one and the same.
Just
right?
sample it, Sarah.
Very nicely done here. Certainly the right message in the bottle for the Pacers here through 2 games. Much more on that. Reminder, 8 o'clock tomorrow, or excuse me, 8 o'clock Friday. You surprised at all? 4.5-point underdog, the early line, the Pacers in Game 3?
I'm not, because you're going back home, and then I would think that Vegas is probably expecting Lillard to be a little bit more like himself, having played, got back in the flow, played a ton of minutes the other night. And so, that's always a factor. And then do your role players kind of have a little pick-me-up at home?
Well, this is it for the Bucks too. If they lose this and then go down 0-3, that's it. Man.
I mean, that's
Cancun. Yeah. Go
I mean,
ahead.
they had the stat last night after the game ended that the Pacers never lost the series after winning games 1 and 2. So it's like
that would be Mark Dykton on the jinx for anybody out there.
I'm
go
jinx. Come on now.
down that path.
But no, you're going to get the Bucks' best effort. You almost have to. It's going to be in front
and I
of
think
their crowd
another
and all
point
that.
to bring up too, the series starts to shrink a little bit in between games. You brought up Lillard. He's going to get the extra day off here before Game 3. But, James, if you look at the schedule the rest of the way,
boom, boom, boom.
You would go from Friday to Sunday, Sunday to Tuesday.
Yep.
So that could impact some things.
Yeah, and to Mark's point about, of trying to avoid that 3-0 or 0-3 hole, when you look at what Giannis has been able to do in his career, when he won a championship, they were down 0-2. So the guy is not going to give up.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
And obviously that was a much better team, but he was like, I've been here before, not going to lay down. And you know what? He's one of the more candid players too. And I think that him and Haliburton are like, different types of the same species when it comes to how candid they are. Because he was like, I don't know if we're going to win Game 3. I don't know that. But he was like, I know I'm going to go out there and play hard, and I have to feed my family. And he's talking about how, like, it's do or die, and I don't really care, like, if you like me and this and that. And, like, but it was real and honest. And a lot of that is me piecing together several answers. But on one hand, he's like, it's do or die. I'm ready. On the other hand, when he was asked, hey, it could get chippy or whatever, he was like, well, this is how I feed my family. So I don't care.
Yeah, I am curious. The next Pacer win will create is this the last game for Giannis with the Bucks storyline?
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And it's
–
anytime you have a star and you go through the playoff exits that Milwaukee has gone through recently and could be going through here right now.
Yeah.
So, like, the earlier you do that, the better. The quicker you do that, the better in the series. Just the whole give them no hope, step on their throat, all of those things.
Oh, yeah, got to kick them while they down.
Don't, for one instance, let them all of a sudden feel a little bit of whatever, energization, for a word that probably doesn't even count as a word.
Energization?
Yeah, soon as I said it out loud,
boy,
I was like,
where's
there's
my
no
red
way.
pen? Ain't you a teacher? We finna mark this paper up. Energized?
Energized.
In my opinion, that's.
I don't even know if that was the right context. Can you play the Rick Carlisle one more time?
Which one? You want to see the faces?
I want to see the faces.
I want to see the faces of those guys.
I want to see the faces of those guys that
I was
say
like,
that's
man,
a word.
that's have you seen the gif of Rick at Summer League with the glasses on? I'm like, that's Rick saying, meet me outside. I got something for you.
That's me listening to Ron Artest on the track,
yeah. Great pull, Kevin.
It was time to, get the out of there.
I've never jumped for a dump button faster in my life.
Is that what I asked him about, where he goes, or how does he consume a game once he gets tossed from it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I'm trying to think. They must have been on a win streak when I asked him that.
You know what I love?
That question.
Whenever, maybe not with Carlisle, but whenever any of the players curse, shout out Michael Preston, Pacers PR. I'll just look at him in the corner, and he just drops his head. He's just like. So
Tyrese went. Did he go? F on us last night?
Yeah, because I followed up with him on the player poll thing, and I said, hey, how do you kind of just balance all the energy you give to the game, whether it's you, your teammates, whatever? He's like, I'm going to be me, and in that answer, he's like, and I don't give a F. And you can just see Preston just drop his head. And so when Siakam finally came in, he starts before Siakam sits down for his press conference, Preston goes, hey, please don't curse. And the entire room's like, let it out, Siakam, do it right now. He's like, you guys are bad influences. And so it was fun. And again, Siakam was another one who had Tyrese's back. He said, hey, we're going to ride with this guy till the wheels fall off. And it's going to rub people the wrong way when you play with that much swagger, as he put it. And it doesn't matter because his teammates love him. And the thing about Tyrese is it's not a hard version to love. Like, there's certain superstars, the way they play, it's like, I might not enjoy this, but, man, he's really great. Like, I don't know if you always enjoy if you're playing with someone who can be very ball dominant and you're not touching it.
Sure.
Like, Tyrese, you're going to get your opportunities with Tyrese, and so
that's why I thought the overrated thing was a bit confusing. It's like, wait a minute. I think
it's hate.
It's pettiness. Guys would love to play with him. And I don't want to make anything more of it. It's 13 dudes in the entire NBA voting for Tyrese Haliburton. So
and I would venture to say those 13 are between Milwaukee
and Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah. Tim Hardaway and his
is Wally Zerbiak. Does he get a vote?
One thing, honestly, I didn't do enough when the Siakam trade happened. I did not give him enough credit for how he is wired.
Yes.
Like
he is so steady.
I didn't know that. And that was certainly poor on me. I mean,
I love you, KB, but damn.
I think Pagano ripping your take on the Siakam
I think I
trade.
described the trade as lukewarm. I was a little bit more in like the OG and Anunoby. The Pacers need 3-and-D more than they need just
my goodness,
throw the ball.
Yeah, you deserve
to a guy.
Yeah,
actually, I think OG and Anunoby's pretty good.
He ain't Siakam though. I'm sorry.
Right, they are two very different players.
Yeah.
Very different players.
Yeah, fair.
And Siakam, what I didn't give enough credit for is walking bucket, but how he is wired. Like his ability, I think, to be a true leader. And that is a major credit. It honestly gets a little bit into this conversation we've had with Anthony Richardson about have the Colts missed more on the field or off the field. With Siakam, I would like to, and it's a Kevin Pritchard question, I'd like to think part of why they felt like the trade was worth it is because he would come in here and obviously score at a high level, but also would lead at a high level. They won a championship. I go back to Siakam as soon as that series ended with Boston last year. And one of the first thing he says after they get swept is, we cannot act like we fall out of bed and get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. And again, his words last night with Jeremiah Johnson, him and McConnell were having this rather intense one-on-one when the game ended last night. I'm like, what in the world are those two talking about? I think Siakam just has such a wonderful old spirit to him. A little bit a la David West. I get the David West vibes, but I think he's probably a little bit even more of a vocal leader.
I always thought just you look at his playoff game log and the amount of playoff games he had to bring that experience to such a young roster. I was like, that's got to pay dividends too, because he's just been in so many postseason appearances that he can kind of harness this with, okay, this is what we need to do to get here. This is what we need to do this. You need to keep doing the work, this and that. And I always thought that was something that went a little under the radar, was how much playoff experience he was bringing to the roster that hadn't really experienced much playoff success.
Well, and I don't know if the first-round pick that spent time in the G League, I don't know if that perspective, helps him as well. But, I enjoy listening to him, I guess, as well, from a post-game standpoint. Him and Tyrese, I just think both of them lead this team, I think, in ways that are really, really important. And frankly, I don't think it's a given with players of their caliber around the league.
No, and with Siakam, real quick, I just enjoy the fact that he kind of explains that winning is fragile. It is very fragile. I mean, this is a guy who won a championship with Toronto after Kawhi clanked in a three-pointer in Game 7 of a playoff series. So, if that doesn't bounce that way, who knows what happens. And so I think he, because of that, doesn't take it for granted. And he certainly enjoys being out there and kind of seizing the moment.
Coming up on the other side, Shane Stikcen. Where are the Colts at from an offensive improvement standpoint? He certainly didn't shy away from the need that needs to be added coming up in the draft. We'll play that audio for you. 9 o'clock hour here. Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Will try to take advantage. He blows by Lopez and sends it to the corner. 8-0 Pacers. Turner with a three, and Milwaukee is reeling early, a minute and a half in. Loose ball in the Milwaukee forecourt. Turner stole it at the other end. A right-hand slam for Siakam. Nembhard on the wing. Now retreats, moves forward down the right side, picks up the bounce, and a nifty bounce pass into the lane. Found Turner, who dunked it. Now McConnell pulls up, left side, dumps it to the top, and Siakam hits a three. McConnell with excellent plays at both ends. They're on a 13-point run, and they've cut it to 2. Pacers in desperate need of a field goal. Here's Haliburton to the left wing. Sends it outside. Siakam gives to Nembhard. 2:16 to go. Nembhard left edge. Shot clock down to 8. Nembhard played by Antetokounmpo. Driving it right hand. Kicks it right side. Siakam is open. And that is a much-needed three. Nembhard down the left side. Confronted by Antetokounmpo. The shot clock at 6. He backs it up and buries a three from out on the left edge, right in front of Doc Rivers, who calls a timeout.
Andrew Nembhard, absolutely fearless.
The building was as loud as I've ever heard it. And, I've been in here for the finals games in 2000 and a lot of conference finals games, and it's never been louder than it was tonight.
Marshall, I love. So Mark Dykton, thank you for that. Excellent. On the Game 2 re-entry, the Pacers are talking, and they're walking right now. Up 2-0, have led for all but about, 90 seconds probably. If you go back to the early parts of Game 1, it did get dicey there late, but as Mark Boyle painted in a beautiful picture, Siakam, huge right wing, and then Andrew Nembhard, I swear, in the playoffs from the left wing on that side of the floor, late shot clock, I think he's 100%. I don't think he's ever missed. Giannis on him, didn't matter. Step back, that was the dagger. 123-115. Pacers up 2-0.
Can we talk about James Johnson's grills?
I couldn't believe he actually had them in. And it looked like he was drinking coffee during the game.
Man, those diamonds was dancing. And then when they had like the dust up in the game, I think Siakam might have got a tech or something like that.
Siakam, he went nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I actually didn't think Gary Trent, I thought it was just kind of a...
You know what, though? My dad always says, like
Portis was the calm one in that whole little skirmish.
But it's always like, well, if you're on the receiving end of the result, you don't really care about the intent. So it's like, if you throw me to the ground and you didn't mean to, and like, I'm still on the ground.
He might watch today and be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one where you look back in film and everyone's laughing at you. But going back to James Johnson and his grills, I was like, you know what? Maybe he is just there to fight. Because I was like, you ain't getting in the game with grills. But my goodness, he looked like he was the diamonds were dancing. He looked so calm. And you can read his lips. They're all kind of, John, he's like, we good. And I'm like, if James Johnson said we good, we good.
You know what James Johnson was saying yesterday?
I want to see the faces of those guys.
Seriously. And, that kind of fits, Mark, because in the other part of the anonymous player
Carlisle's in the alley, and all of a sudden James Johnson smiles, and you see the girls in.
You see James Johnson and Rick Carlisle in an alley. You're probably not going that way. You're like, I just trouble.
Hell no.
Not at all. I mean, Rick Carlisle's still a very tall person. But
Rick's beating some ass in the alley.
But when you look at this other part of the anonymous player poll, there was another Pacer included. And it was James Johnson. Right? Yes. And so he was voted as the player in the league you would least like to fight. There were 101 votes cast for this question. He got 63%, and I believe that comes out to around 89 or 90 players who were saying, we ain't trying to fight that dude.
I'm dying laughing. I don't know if you guys saw this video, the Fever players walking off the floor last night. For those that missed it, the Fever players threw T-shirts into the crowd last night, and they're walking off the floor, and one of them has an extra T-shirt that she's throwing up into the crowd. I think it's Natasha Howard. And Caitlin Clark is behind her, and if you can read the lips, she says, hit the Bucks guy in the face. Which Sophie Cunningham's just dying laughing at Caitlin Clark saying that there. It was quite the scene last night in Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
It was jumping, man.
Do we think the deer hunting guys are rich, or like someone sits in those seats and they just said, hey, will you wear these?
I think he probably got some money. I just don't see how else you can afford seats like that for that type of game.
So they're not like hired deer hunting wares? They're like
hired by who? I guess is
by the rich people that usually sit in those seats.
Nah, I'm not buying that. They probably got a trust fund somewhere. I mean, I'm not hating. Look, it's a great life. I wear a deer suit as well to be sitting courtside for a game, and I probably cheer for the wrong team, but don't
Flamingo
matter.
guy in the building last night. Again, I would still like the countdown on the Giannis free throws.
Well, did you see the guy that had the sign, the handmade sign?
That was hilarious.
Yeah, that's
sign guy. Shout out to
Flamingo guy.
Yeah,
That's
I
him.
want him.
Yeah.
I want him all the time.
And again, I'd
Can
like
he travel
the
with the team?
I'd like the countdown. What was Giannis last night? Did he end up? He missed a lot late. Now that I think about it,
Yeah, he started off pretty strong though.
he was probably right around his average for the year.
61% was his average for the year. I'll get you the stats real quick on what he shot from the free throw line last night. But
Yeah, I would like the countdown at one point.
So 10, 9.
Yeah,
That probably is that honestly is more fitting
speed it up a little
because there's it's literally the time
and
is
then
running out.
I mean, the most annoying buzzer sound. Just the 18,000 people making the most annoying buzzer sound you could ever make.
Yeah, you're right on the nose, KB. 6 of 10 from the free throw line.
Okay, so he's right at his average.
Yeah.
Let's get him below average. Let's get him lower than that. Coming up 8 o'clock on Friday, game 3 here of this series. Shane Stikcen yesterday met the media. Again, Colts begin their offseason program, so you'll see strength and conditioning. It's kind of the main first couple of weeks of activity. It'll ramp up a little over a month from now. Will be their first 11-on-11 work of the offseason. Did Shane Stikcen let the cat out of the bag a little bit on what they want in the draft?
I mean, did he, or did he just say what everyone already knows?
Yesterday, Shane asked kind of generally about the offense so far. They really haven't made any notable moves this offseason. Here was Shane's thoughts on the 2025 offense.
I like our receiving core, where that's at. Obviously, we're looking, to add a pass-catching tight end possibly. We'll see how that plays out.
Possibly. He couched it a little bit.
One more time, Mark Stikcen, on that.
I like our receiving core, where that's at. Obviously, we're looking, to add a pass-catching tight end possibly. We'll see how that plays out.
I love Shane Stikcen answers because it always sounds like it's me talking to like a girlfriend's parents back in the day, or like I'm always so nervous, like what I just said, that I go with like possibly, maybe. I mean,
yeah. That first meet is always so freaking awkward.
Well, I'm sweating as much as, frankly, these players will be when Rick Carlisle and James Johnson show up in the alleyway to see them.
We need a shirt. We need the shop. Or,
sure, Brian from the shop.
Home field, apparel. Like, let's get that. I need an NBA Jam version of James Johnson and Rick Carlisle, like your shirt you have on today.
The Stikcen clip, though. One more time, Mark. The pass catching part of it.
I like our receiving core, where that's at. Obviously, we're looking, to add a pass-catching tight end possibly. We'll see how that plays out.
The pass-catching tight end. What did Chris Ballard say to you guys on Monday, James? Yes, in an ideal world, you'd add a versatile tight end that can block and receive, but as long as you're functional in the run game, we're good. I just keep on coming back to Colston Loveland. I keep on coming back to that. And unless an offensive lineman falls that they don't expect, that's where I'll be coming up tomorrow night at about 10 o'clock, because that's when the Pacers or that's when the Colts are likely to draft.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about route running, pass catching ability, the ability to make contested catches, fluid athlete. I know the shoulder is something they have to make sure they check out, but I do have him on my big board for the Colts, and I think that it wouldn't be a consolation pick. I think he's a really good player and someone who could, immediately help you, assuming he's fully healthy for the season, which he said he will be. I think that he could be a game changer. And so, again, picking at 14, it's kind of hard to predict what they would do, mainly because you don't know what's going to happen before you and who could trade up or trade down or trade back. But if he's there at 14, I'd be a little surprised that they didn't take him.
I feel like with Tyler Warren, too, you're going to have to trade up to get him. And if you want to just stay at 14 and not move up and mortgage some picks, Loveland will be there.
And I'm not sold that, honestly, Warren's that much higher on the Colts board than Loveland.
I totally agree.
I think that I kind of got that vibe from Chris Ballard. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. I mean, I'm reading too much into all this stuff at this point in the draft process. But when he was saying, like, our board is not like the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, the board here, I would say, among the Indianapolis fan base is like Tyler Warren or nobody. And if you talk to those around the league, and I've talked to a few draft analysts, and, I'm sure that they've also by proxy talked to scouts, and the general consensus is that it's kind of a preference thing on which tight end you want to take first. And Colts Love is also younger. That's a factor. And on top of that, just play-wise, there's not this huge gap between the two.
10 minutes per pick tomorrow. So if you do that math, yeah, the Colts probably right around 10 o'clock will hopefully make their selection. Couple over-unders from Vegas. They've bumped the Tyler Warren over-under a little bit lower. It still hovers right around Mark's Bears, 10.5. The Bears are at pick 10. And then Loveland at 16.5. That is his over-under, which has risen a bit. Shedeur Sanders also 10.5 from an over-under pick number tomorrow.
You think he's going to fall the most?
Who?
Shedeur.
I still feel
somebody's
like
going to have a long night tomorrow night.
Yeah, but I just feel like quarterback still.
Yeah, I feel like we did this last year, right? Where it's like, and then we saw 6 quarterbacks. Now, granted, it was a better class overall.
Well, I think, yeah. I read someone said that Cam Ward, if in last year's class, would be the 7th best, prospect. So, like, well, okay, well, I don't know. But I keep hearing Steelers talk. They'd have to move up, or potentially if he fell that far. But someone's fallen. I don't know who it is. We get this every year that someone just starts slipping down the board.
Well, it's either Sanders or nobody, right? I mean, I don't think anybody's viewing like Jackson Dart as whatever, a top 10 pick or anything along those lines. It is interesting if you look at the Colts right now, and I'm kind of making the rounds here in the mock draft world right now. It's not as consensus as I thought, or I think it's not as consensus as it has been here in recent weeks. I think in recent weeks it's been Warren and Loveland. Mm-hmm. I've looked at a couple mocks here this morning. Bucky Brooks from NFL Network, he's got Armand Membu from Missouri. That's probably the furthest I've seen him drop. But again, that's one of those, if the offensive lineman is there. Ryan Wilson from CBS, he's got Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Schrager, freshly off to ESPN, he does one mock draft a year, and he's got the Colts trading up with the Bears for Loveland. So the Colts going up to 10.
So where's Warren going in that scenario?
Let me read you the Schrager description, and then I will give you that. My first trade is a fun one, Schrager says. So, again, he's got no trade until the Colts here at 10. The Colts give up number 14 and 80, so that's their third-round pick, to move up 4 spots in a deal with the Bears. Indianapolis GM Chris Ballard needs to do something to help his offense, no matter if it's Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So who does he pick? Ballard and company get a 6'6" tight end who has many teams enchanted. What a word. Sounds like James Boyd SAT word.
You said energization earlier.
Certainly doesn't sound like me talking. Ahead of round 1, this pick would be about instant offense for a team that needs it. He had Warren going 7, Mark, to the Jets.
I mean, that is a scenario that I could totally see playing out because I think the Bears do want to move out of 10 because I don't buy all the smoke with Genty and Warren. And I think if they can find someone who wants to move up, and I thought the Colts could be a possible suitor there, I could totally see in that working out where the Colts move up a few spots, the Bears move back a few spots, and they both get the guys that they want. I could totally see that happening.
So for those out there who are curious like me, because this is something I always look at, and Kevin, you probably looked at this website as well, drafttech.com, the trade value chart that kind of breaks down what each pick is valued at.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you, if you're curious, like, okay, if you want to trade up to Tennessee for the number 1 pick, what is it valued at? It's 3,000 points. And so you can look at each team's picks and kind of add it up. Like, okay, if I want to go up to number 1 for 3,000 points and the math is check out, I got to give up my first round pick plus this other pick. And it kind of gives you an idea of what these things will cost. And so it does seem like at minimum, if the Colts were to move up to number 10 or in the top 10, you're getting up a first and a third. This year's first and third. So is that worth it? I'm just not so sure about that, especially in a class where it is viewed as having more depth, especially at tight end, and you could probably still find somebody. And also knowing you have other needs. I mean, we talked about it, early on the show. Your offensive line, you're down 2 starters from last year. We would assume that center will be decided between Pinter and Bortolini, but what about right guard? They're mum on that so far. That matters. It's not a sexy pick, but easiest way to get to the quarterback is the simplest path, and that's inside, right guard or center. So you got to figure that out. And then on top of that, linebacker, edge. I mean, they're pretty open a lot of things.
I did 4 scenarios in an article up on our website, and I had them trading up to 7, for a tight end, and then taking Smile Munden Jr., linebacker out of Georgia. Again, moving from 14 all the way to 7, you'd give up your second-round pick if you kind of follow that trade value chart. And, James, that would be walking away from the first 3 rounds of the draft with no offensive or defensive linemen. I'm like, what a dumbass, Kevin. Can you imagine a Chris Ballard draft and you literally have that? So that's where I look at it and kind of laugh at myself. But if you are this gung-ho about tight end, and let's say Warren goes 7 to the Jets, those next 6 picks.
Ooh, yeah.
I was talking with Rick Venturi over the weekend, and he thinks there's a real chance that Loveland wouldn't be there at 14. Now, again, are you that married to tight end? Are you that married to the top-end depth at tight end in this year's draft class? Or do you view it a little bit later in the draft? I think those are some things that you certainly have to factor in, but I had not seen that one. A trade up to 10 for Loveland. That is a little bit more on the unique side of it. Granted, Chris Ballard tried to trade up last year.
Is it possible? I believe the Bears don't even have that many picks this year in the draft, and that could change. Does that change what they want to do? But I think I'm getting ahead of myself because I know Chris Ballard has changed a lot. Trading up in the first round for a tight end seems like that would be something. And maybe is that a little more of the win now scenario? Because he was asked that question too on Monday. You're feeling, obviously you feel pressure to win now. So would you kind of sacrifice the long-term future for the short-term future? And he said no, quickly. He was like, I would never do that. He said, we need to win now, but I'm just not wired like that. So I don't see him kind of swinging for the fences and trying to feeling like I got to do it all in 1 year.
Right. And again, I didn't hear a different draft tune back in January of hey,
you've been hammering that.
I've screwed up in the draft. No, I didn't hear that at all. I've heard free agency, I needed to be better. Defensively, we need to be better. And so far, the actions have played out. One more thing to note on tight end. I was asked this yesterday after the show. I forget the listener who emailed me, but mentioned hey, what do you think is kind of easier to teach at tight end? Is it the skill set of pass catching or the skill set of blocking? I think in regards to Loveland, I think there are some NFL people out there that do believe he will be a better blocker than he showed at Michigan as he continues to grow. James, he's 20, right? 20 years old?
Who, Loveland?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he's 21.
Just turned 21?
Or about to be 21 very soon, actually.
Yeah, he's very young.
He turned 21 next month.
Very young for a prospect. And again, the thought is, can you just be a little bit more functional?
Oh, here it is. He just turned 21 a couple days ago, 2 weeks ago.
So again, that's one of the younger prospects.
Yeah, look at this year. 2004, he was born. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oof, Lord.
Trust me. Yeah. Reason why I had a hair transplant and I've got all the gray hair that I do. Basically, to answer the question, I think you could be a little bit more serviceable in the blocking game, and you have to factor in as well, the Colts do have some blocking. They feel good about that aspect. It's the receiving part, which, again, directly impacts where you're at, no matter which quarterback you have there.
Mm-hmm.
No matter if it's Jones or Richardson, I think it's just finding steadiness, finding a little bit easier in the passing game. All right, much more on this, much more on Game 2 last night. Mark Dykton, let's check it out.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
James Boyd, one game ball from last night. You give it to who?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Haliburton because you were voted as the most overrated player and you responded in that fashion.
Yeah, I thought how Haliburton set the tone early. It might get lost, but he had 7 points and 6 assists in the first quarter. Didn't even play the whole first quarter. You put up that stat number. I thought you set the tone for the rest of the game. The Pacers played with the lead throughout. Certainly got close late. Siakam, Nembhard, dagger from the right wing, dagger from the left wing. And the Pacers will now exit Gainbridge Fieldhouse up 2-0, Game 3. It is Friday. It is 8 o'clock. The Bucks are a 4.5-point favorite. If you just want to nerd out over the line, I mean, the line was pretty much Pacers favored by 4.5 here in the first 2 games. Now the Bucks are favored by that much here coming up on Friday night. So game 3, 8 o'clock. Game 4, 9:30. And if we did have a game 5, it would be next Tuesday. And that tip time would be very early. Sounds like 6 or 7 o'clock for that one. Elsewhere in the NBA last night, the Lakers, they win an ugly one over the T-Wolves, even up that series 1-1. The Thunder all over the Grizzlies. Are you a believer in the Thunder being the last one standing?
Yeah, I am. They're legit. They're young. They're talented. They're deep. I mean, what more can you ask for from a team?
Tonight, we've got 3 games. It'll be the Magic and the Celtics. We'll see about the health and availability of Jason Tatum. Doubtful for this one. The Heat and the Cavs. Not to get too greedy, but if you're a Pacer fan, you might want to see the Heat start to win a game or 2 to extend that series a little bit longer. And the Rockets and Warriors. You think Houston does what LA did last night? Do they even it up at home?
They better. If they don't, they're dead. There's Steph Curry and them. They've been here before, and he's a Grim Reaper when it comes playoff time.
Speaking of dead, those are my thoughts on bragging about the Cincinnati Reds. Mark, go ahead. Play the. You've played the damn fight song. You've done all of it.
I don't want to beat you over the head.
Mark's over here just pressing swooshes.
I was moving on for you. I was trying to help you, but if you really want it, I will oblige.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
Cubs heroics. What was it? It was they were down 10-7, right?
Yeah.
Homer's was it Homer's 8th, 9th, and 10th?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It was a wild game. It was
Quite
the second
night in Wrigley.
Second wildest. Like they had the Diamondbacks game last Friday. I think it was like 13.
That was a crazy
that was another
game.
wild
the
one.
8th inning in that one.
They've been on. Those bats are swinging big sticks, and yeah, it's been high scoring and fun to watch. It has been stressful though, but they've been on the right side of it against the Dodgers as of late, and then. For the Cardinals fans that are out there, because apparently it's not just Alex Golden.
Alex
there are the
Golden
ones.
just
You
weeping
beat the
over
Atlanta
here.
Braves, who are a sorry team right now. So congratulations.
By the way, the White Sox are still the White Sox.
They might be actually worse than the team that set the record last year. They are abysmal.
Can I ask you, how did you become a Cubs fan and your dad's a Sox fan?
That was just because. I mean, we went to White Sox games back in the day. My grandpa had.
Mark hates his dad. James.
That's not true.
I'm about to say this is what
I
it
was there for his
sounds
knee
like.
surgery.
It sounds
on
like you're
Monday.
Benedict Arnold over there.
Talking about. No, I was we gone to White Sox games. My grandpa had season tickets, so he'd give us some stuff. But it was always like, I was playing Little League. I was on one of my team was the Cubs, so then I kind of gravitated toward them. Like, who's the Sammy Sosa guy? He seems fun. And then the summer of '98 happened, and I was like, I'm locked in. I'm done.
Respect. My dad's a Knicks fan from Chicago because the Knicks were garbage when he was. I mean, not the Knicks. The Bulls were garbage when he was growing up, and he wouldn't jump on the Michael Jordan train even when they got good.
Wow.
Because by that time he was in like
Hat
his
tip to Mr.
teenage
Boyd.
years. So yeah, respect to him. But I did tell him I am not a fan of watching Jalen Brunson play basketball that often because of the head flopping and stuff like that. And he tends to agree to a certain degree. He doesn't know if they can win like that. I will say that Siakam, as they say, is this ethical hooper, gives you the throwback vibes.
Who's the least whiniest star player in the NBA?
Probably Steph Curry, to me. I don't think Steph really whines, and he gets.
That's a good one.
He gets held a lot. He gets fouled a lot. There's some calls he doesn't get.
Yeah.
Because he is Steph Curry, and like he's always running and moving. Like I think he gets fouled a lot off the ball. And they don't really call it because he's not LeBron or he's not these bigger statured guys. But I think Steph is the most like mild-mannered superstar I've probably ever seen.
Oval testing over at IMS today and tomorrow. Cars on the track in about 30 or 40 minutes. So that lovely sound indicates spring is here. You will hear it the next 2 days at 16th and Georgetown. Yeah, this is a busy practice, honestly, day and 2 days, I should say, here over at the Speedway. Nothing on track over there from an oval standpoint until mid-May. So if you do get some inclement weather coming up in May, these days are really important, and it looks like weather will cooperate for that. All right, on the other side, much more on Game 2 and that reaction from last night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton with you here on a Wednesday.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, coming up tomorrow, we'll obviously preview the NFL Draft. 8 o'clock Thursday night, round one. We'll carry that on our airwaves. We'll mock draft simulator it up a couple times tomorrow. We'll play around with one of those mock draft simulators. What is on the board for the Colts at 14? What would we do? What do we think Chris Ballard would do? We'll bring that to you coming up throughout the show tomorrow.
Chris, make sure you're listeing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We're going to have a
Ballard.
fire mock draft. I'm letting you know right now. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The picks are in.
Gosh, something about that music, though, does get me kind of excited. Is the NFL Draft and the transfer portal the same thing? Is it the greatest hype machine for fan bases?
I mean, yeah. You know what it is? I honestly think that reporters, and we've done this, you can build like a career off of just those things. If you're able to break news at the transfer portal, you're a guy. You know, people want to read your stuff. If you're able to give us a crystal ball, it's a thing. And it's the same thing with mock drafts. Like, we do this every year. It's the greatest scam in sports. I'm going to create 4 mock drafts. None of them are going to be remotely close to being right. Well, granted, you know, I did get Anthony Richardson right a couple years ago. Got 1 pick on the board. But
we had to drink mayo and coffee because we had Will Levis potentially.
Oh. Well, no, I had Richardson, but
yeah. I did too. But I think why did we do that? We just did it in case they did it.
We just did it because we're tough.
I don't think that's ever been said any other time, so I'll roll with it.
I ain't
we're
that
tough as hell here.
I'm not that tough.
We did it twice too.
We're in the radio business.
Oh no,
every time Will Levis starts a game against the Colts, I'll continue to do it.
We can do that.
I could feel it.
James,
curdling.
You don't have to participate.
I'm about to say,
You're welcome to.
Who is we? I don't speak no French. Nope.
Where's the plop sound, Mark? You've been all over the sound.
I can get the plop. I forgot
all
about
day,
the plop.
and we don't have the Mayo plop ready.
Well, I wasn't expecting to go down the Will Levis rabbit hole.
Oh, I mean, it is the NFL Draft.
Hold on a second.
So we'll do that here coming up tomorrow. A little mock draft simulation. Oh, just, one more time.
The fact that was authentic,
I'm
real.
Disgusted.
No audio
that
enhancement.
Was Kevin plopping the mayo in the coffee, and that's the sound it made off the microphone. And it was just a horrific sound. Jake was gonna vomit already. Yeah, that was quite the day.
Portal NFL Draft hype. I think they're the exact same thing. The portal immediately re-energizes a college fan base, and the NFL Draft immediately re-energizes your NFL fan base.
To confirm your theory, at least on the NFL side, we got an email from our editors. This is maybe like a week ago. It's like, yes, we cover the Super Bowl, but our Super Bowl of coverage is the NFL Draft. And that to me is so like fitting of just how big. This is our biggest event as far as clicks, eyes, because everyone's involved with it. Unlike the Super Bowl, where it's 2 teams, this is every team.
I've shared this before, James. I used to, I don't cover the Pacers on a daily basis, obviously, anymore. But when I did in 2018, the Pacers 7-game series of the Cavs overlapped with the Colts in the NFL Draft. That was the Quentin Nelson draft.
Mm-hmm.
So in the month of April on our website, Colts Draft, Pacers in a 7-game playoff series against LeBron. The 10 most clicked articles on our site, 9 of them Colts, 1 of them Pacers. The one Pacer one was the NBA ruling on a LeBron James block if it was a goaltending in the 2-minute report or not. That was the one. I mean, the draft is king. It is the king of all kings.
Oh, yeah.
People eat it up. Having said that, this might be anecdotal evidence, and I'm curious your 2 thoughts on this. Excuse me, it might not be anecdotal evidence. I feel like I see more Pacer gear than I do Colts gear around town. Do you guys agree with that or no?
One team is on the up. The other team has kind of been, you think that has anything to do with it?
I still feel, I mean, maybe
or am I just hanging out with other 35 to 45-year-old men at parks and the Children's Museum, and they just have more Pacers throwback gear?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of that. I'm probably not the best person to ask because I feel like if I go to, training camp for the Colts, it's it's always kind of skewed. I mean, if we're talking like, kings and queens, I see Caitlin Clark everywhere. Can't escape her. Like she's the top of the top. When
her
it comes
gear
to,
is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, her gear is everywhere. Mark, let's do a little Jiffy Lube stat of the day. Scotty's got a few to throw at us. Jiffy Lube, Indiana's oil change since 1985. A few of these I find pretty interesting. Last night's win, the first time the Pacers won a playoff game wire to wire since Game 4, 2016. with the Raptors. Again, the Pacers have led for all but about 90 seconds in this series. That 40-point first quarter, the most they've scored ever in any quarter of an NBA playoff game. And then, James, I know this one caught your eye. The Pacers lead 2-0 in a playoff series, first time since 2013, round one. That kind of surprised me, but they are 11-0 all time and taking a 2-0 lead. Never lost a best-of-7 series, went up 2-0.
LeVar Ball never lost. And so they're certainly going to try to continue that trend come Friday when we're holed up in the Colts media room, hoping that, when the fourth quarter rolls around, we're not on the clock.
I would add, to go back to the 40 points in the first quarter last night, I guess two things on that. One, I thought the urgency the Pacers started the game with was huge. And it helps when Kyle Kuzma's, attempted layups like Max Bowen on the Fisher-Price goal. But that was, I thought, a great, you were the hungrier team to start. And Doc Rivers said for 3 days, we got to be more physical. We got to be hungrier. We got to hustle, blah, blah, blah. And his team didn't even do that at all.
It didn't help that they ran the first play for Kyle Kuzma.
Well, I know.
Like, is that not supposed to be for Dame or somebody to get him?
I thought that was a little bit like
what?
You're really trying to help a dude that's struggling. It's like
I respect it, but
I'd probably just
miss 2 layups.
Let Kuzma settle into the flow of the game a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would add too, I just don't think the Bucks can guard the Pacers. Period.
Do they want to? Because I'm seeing guys just go right by them.
If you make them guard you, I thought the Siakam 3 last night at 115, 113 was like a perfect description of this. That possession really wasn't going anywhere. It had kind of gotten late clock, and next thing you know, Siakam just pops open. And that's not Nembhard popping open, or Neesmith popping open, or Turner popping open. That is one of your go-to guys that just gets wide open, and Kuzma's like, oh, bleep, and he runs out there, and Siakam gets a clean look 4-3 in that situation. If you just make the Bucks have to defend you for 15, 18, 20 seconds, you're going to get good looks. And I say this about the zone, too. I mean, the Bucks lost Aaron Neesmith on that first possession of the third quarter. Boom, 3. I just think the Pacers are getting great looks. And sure, some of it has to do with definitely Indiana, but I think the Bucks are lost defensively. I mean, Indiana's had back-to-back games of single-digit turnovers. You will not find them. They aren't a big turnover team, to be fair, but they are. That did not happen very often at all during the regular season. And James, you would think in the playoffs, you play these teams where the intensity rises, the scouting report rises, all that. You're probably going to inevitably fall into a few more turnovers.
And again, if you're not giving them the extra chances, where are they gonna get or gain some ground? And again, besides, I was watching last night. I'm like, man, it's gonna take Giannis being Giannis. Which, by the way, he's just a walking 30 and 15. He's Shaq. He's modern-day Shaq.
Yeah, I honestly thought last night he had a quiet game, and then I looked at the box score, and I'm like, are you an idiot, Kevin?
Yeah, you know what's funny?
Did it feel that way? Am I the only one that kind of felt that?
Indy Stars Dustin DePiric asked Siakam about guarding him and slowing him down, what he did right, and Siakam just kind of scoffed. He's like, what I did right? He's looking at the box score they printed out for him, and he's like checking the numbers. He's like, you see what he had?
34 on 14 of 20 shooting, 18 rebounds and 7 assists, and I'm sitting here saying I thought he had a quiet game.
Just greatness. But again,
it was those late clank free throws that threw you off.
Yes, I don't know what it was.
But if he isn't going, nuclear, and if Dame is, again, he started off pretty strong with the 2 made threes to start, tapered off, only scored 3 points in the second half. And some would say he got put in Nembhard jail. I know that Tyrese Haliburton made a reference, to that. But if those two aren't on their absolute A game, it feels like the Bucks have no chance to win these games.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason they were in last night is Portis had a career game. Frankly.
And I think you wasted the Portis game.
Yeah.
You can't expect that every night.
Not only I thought wasted the Portis game, James, I thought you wasted a chance on the road. There will not be a one-possession game with 2-3 minutes. I mean, you got to win a road game at some point.
Yeah, especially now.
And now it's game 5 or game 7. Much more on the other side. We'll do it one final time here. Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, James Boyd, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Great variety from Mark Dykton, per usual, here on this Wednesday morning.
I wish I was like that.
Master P and Message in a Bottle from Sarah.
Yeah, like I wish I liked all genres of music. My dad is like that.
Yeah.
He likes every great artist's worst song.
I will say this. I found myself...
The playlist is terrible, but he likes a variety of music.
And credit to my wonderful wife, Maddie, for this. I found myself, like, being a little bit more appreciative of just watching, like, great entertainment in a concert setting. Like, even if I don't love the music.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, it's really impressive what they're doing up there. You know what I'm like? Yeah. I don't know. That might sound like really dumb for me to say.
You want to know what we got my dad for his birthday? Chris Stapleton tickets.
I've seen Mr. Stapleton.
And my dad loves country music.
Stapleton brings it.
Yeah, him and my mom are going. And then this man, I went home from
Wrigley,
Easter.
Or where's that at?
I believe it's not at Wrigley. It's at some Chicago venue. Honestly, I was a little unfamiliar because it wasn't like United Center. It was something else. But and then we tell him,
trying to fill up U.S. Cellular.
Yeah, so my mom goes, "Hey, James is home. Let's tell your dad what we got for him, whatever." And then this man had the audacity to ask, "Who am I going with?" I'm like, "Your wife." Like, the one who planned this. And, like, what? Like, and he's like, "Oh, cool." And then he's like, "Oh, that makes me feel good. The Knicks might have lost or something like that." He's like, "Make me feel a little bit better about myself."
No.
So, yeah, he's
I'll
excited
probably
about
stop
that.
there before I say anything else on that. I know Mark was thinking that James already got mad at me a couple weeks ago for saying that he woke up with some strange next to him. That's why.
No. But I will say, if we got to duke it out, if we got to fight, Kevin, it's fine. We're like brothers, man. We'll duke it out and we'll be fine.
That's why
that'll be in round 4 of the NFL draft when you guys are stuck with each other again.
He gave J&B the cold shoulder and couldn't hoop with him. What do you guys think about this scenario I threw out here on the website? Colts Draft coming out tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Shamar Stewart, D-end at pick 14. Number 45 overall, middle of round 2. Running back TreVeyon Henderson.
I love him.
Ohio State.
Ooh, he can play.
And then in round 3, they go with the tight end, Gunnar Helm, Texas. DN for a second straight year. Running back in the middle of round 2. Then you dip into the tight end waters in round 3. Like, love, hate. You want to see those people in the dark alley with Rick Carlisle and James Johnson? What are your thoughts?
I'll go like. I know that Gunnar Helm sprained his ankle at the combine, had a terrible 40 time. Testing was not good. So I'm like, man, is that testing going to be a precursor for you not performing at the next level? Were you just injured? Or I don't know what. Do I respect you for finishing your 40 after spraining your ankle pretty badly? But as far as the other two players, I mean, yeah, those are dudes. And to go back to the running back, TreVeyon Henderson, all you need to know, Colts fans, is that he levels guys as a pass protection guy. And he is a game breaker when it comes to
I've seen it
running
against my Irish.
And receiving. I mean, yeah, he did it in the college football playoff for sure. So
Hell, he did it the year before in South Bend as well in that matchup.
I think that he is somebody who could certainly add a new flavor to that running back room. I just wonder if that's still a little too high since we're going to running back.
Well, I laugh. I'm like, wait, I didn't take an offensive lineman. It's just like,
oh, you got some hate. You got some hate comments in the chat.
Oh, people are hating on it?
Oh, yeah. They're like, no DN at 14. But
yeah, I can see where people do not want to see that again. Where they're like, we've done this song and dance already.
But keep in mind, you lost Dio Dangbo. You don't have a defensive end under contract through 2026 besides Latu. So
yeah, it's not like I'm drafting a kicker at 14. I mean, you don't think pass rush matters in the NFL?
Oh, you've been drinking the Chris Ballard Kool-Aid. That's what they're going to tell you that you're doing.
People watch the Super Bowl. People see what that Eagles front did. I get it. And, someone asked me the other day, they're like, man, I don't trust Ballard to draft defensive ends anymore, so he needs to stop doing it. I'm like, okay. He's the GM. You can't, just because he hasn't drafted well doesn't mean you can stop all of a sudden. You got to, still actually do it and try to attempt it. By the way, these pictures of the Speedway Spark Plugs new football field, this is awesome.
I took a trip over to Speedway because I believe Anthony Richardson donated some helmets or something last year.
I've actually been to a Speedway high school football game. So they've got the wing and wheel logo. Love it at the 50-yard line. They have the yard of bricks as the 50-yard line.
I like that. That's dope.
And then they've got, they have their own colors, which is what, I don't know, called gold and maroonish, brownish, however you wanted to call it. They've got that checkered in the end zone. This is awesome. Gosh, I love this. Cars in the track, by the way, here in about 10 minutes over at 16th in Georgetown. Back-to-back practice days, oval test, however you want to call it. All 34 cars in the 500 supposed to be out there. You think there's any chance in the world they would take a running back in round 2? Or how about this, running back on day 2? So that would be round 2 or 3.
So you have Henderson at 45? Because I feel like Henderson might be gone by then. I feel like he's like kind of a name that's kind of rising up boards.
Really?
The stuff I've seen, I'm like,
I feel like the 2 running backs in round 1 are Genty and the Hampton kid.
Mm-hmm. Henderson, I feel like, is the next tier, though.
So would he make it to the middle of round 2?
I don't know.
I guess let's just play this out, Mark. The general idea of taking a running back.
I'm not opposed to it.
Before round 4. You are not opposed to it,
No.
James Boyd?
Not opposed.
A running back at 45?
Before round 4. So I'll say round 2 or 3.
I'm not opposed to that at all. Not opposed to that.
I feel like there's been too many times in past seasons where you're relying on Jonathan Taylor to be a workhorse. And yes, he's paid like to be one, but he's also getting older, and he just can't. You can't rely on that year in and year out.
Yeah.
You have to be able to spread out the ball a little bit.
And he's missed at least 3 games due to injury over the last 3 years. So you got, I mean, if you're being real, he's getting older, like Mark said. Older running backs don't get healthier. Older football players don't get healthier. So you have to kind of factor in and expect that he's going to miss some time this year because that's just what has happened in the past.
And I like Khalil Herbert, but like, I mean, he's not. You need to start planning for the future.
No.
Well.
Let me be very clear. They need a running back at some point in the draft.
Yes, they do.
I don't think they need it as early as the hypothetical I threw out here. Just to add one more thing on Taylor, I've always felt this about Taylor. I do think he's a bit unique. And, like, I don't know if it's Derrick Henry unique, like still going to produce into his 30s, but I think he can give you something deep into his 20s. He just turned 26 years old. But there are people out there that look at his carry number, and if you add the carries at Wisconsin, he's over 2,000 carries since college.
Yeah.
There are, and it might be even higher than that. It might be like 22 or 2,300. There's a lot of people that see that number and get frightened.
You know what? To your point, Kevin, and it's on a tangent, but after the year Saquon Barkley had, I would not go near him in a fantasy draft because in history shows us he's going to break down. You look at, what
so the year Saquon had, see that, I look at that in the reverse. Some people might say, hey, look what he did at the age that he's at. Aren't Saquon and Taylor pretty similar ages?
Yeah, but the workload that Barkley had last year, and considering the run they had, the extra games, it adds another layer to it.
Got it.
Like Christian McCaffrey was the same way.
Takes a lot of tread off.
Yeah, like you usually break down.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. I think the running back debate is an interesting one. I don't expect it, but it's an interesting one. All right, again, tomorrow on the show, we'll throw some mock draft simulations at you here. We'll probably do one each and every hour. Talk about what it could look like at 14, what we would do, what we think the Colts would do. Thank you for spending this Wednesday with us. It'll be us three the rest of the week. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. The Pacers have talked. The Pacers have walked. They are Game 2 winners. Again, Game 3 coming up Friday in Milwaukee at 8 o'clock. Everybody have a great Wednesday. Enjoy the nice weather if you can. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Fan Morning Show signing off.